I'm so excited to introduce Camille Knudson. I have known Camille for many years because she's been so highly involved in our local everything. So she has been on our local school board already, and she's ran for the House of Representative seat. She's highly involved in the political events that we have. She's always been a great supporter of the platform of our party. She's lived by example. She lives within my neighborhood, so she's community involved already. She has young kids that have gone through and now they're growing up. Your kids are so grown up, and you actually have a kid that's a soldier. Is that right?
A Marine.
Yep, my oldest is a Marine.
That's incredible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Camille Knudson. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I want to know, though, how do you make your hair look so good with the headphones?
Oh, I smash it on, and then
she sits and fusses with it for the first.
So if you need to fuss, by all means.
Well, I think the 70-mile-an-hour wind out there kind of.
Today's weather cranked on us
hey?
Crazy, right?
Hey, that groundhog was full of Bravo Sierra.
Yeah, I was at Twilla Junior earlier in Twilla High, and it was raining and then snowing and then raining again. I'm like, yeah, my hair's done for the day. So.
I don't. Your hair looks fine.
Thank you.
To me, I mean, I don't have any, so I can just sit here in jealousy.
So right off the gate, Camille, what are you thinking to put your name to work and serve district? What district are you? 10?
10.
District 10 on the state school board. Like, what got you to think, oh yeah, I don't mind being hated by half the state, and I don't mind having to figure out the bureaucracies that are involved in the state school board. Tell me, what is your reason for getting into this race?
It's actually kind of a simple answer. Just watching the state school board over the last couple of years, when I served on the local school board for Twilla County, I of course always paid attention to what was happening on the state level, and then during COVID, couldn't attend the meetings in person, so I'd listen to them online. And then when I was no longer on the local board, I still continued to listen and know what was going on. And the last couple of years just had me more and more concerned as I would listen to what was happening up on the state level. And the most important things that would catch my ear, or what I'm concerned with, is first of all the board's effectiveness. You know, their meetings are 16, 17 hours long every month.
Yeah, on a Thursday.
What
starting in the morning when no regular person could even attend.
Right.
And why aren't they doing them once a week? So they're not 16, 17 hours long.
What's causing them to be that long? Let's dig into that first. That meeting that they said went like, I think it was 14 hours. What was the agenda that day that was so pressing?
Well, I think it's more important to know it's not necessarily what's on the agenda. There's a lot of, no. When I started on the local school board, I got to back up a little bit. I remember talking to other board members, and they said, are you prepared to work for a three-headed beast? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, you have the governor's office that thinks they're responsible and in charge of education. You have your state school board who thinks they're in charge and over legislation. And then you have your legislators who think they're over education. And in reality, who is responsible for education in your local communities are your local communities, your local families, right? So you have three different beasts, if you will, that are trying to make all these decisions for what is happening in our education system across the state. And they're all kind of fighting. And we saw it with this legislative session, how many education bills came through, how many normal bills came through, right? Record amount. And it's because everybody is butting heads of what education should look like, and no one is staying in their lane, including the state school board. So you have these meetings that are coming up, and rather, if you pull up the Utah Constitution, it actually talks about the state school board and their authority and what they're responsible for. And it's a general supervision. And you have a lot of them that are looking into the micromanaging of classrooms. And instead of really working on with our local school boards and what's happening in our local communities, they're making these they're making these more detailed, broad things.
Could that be
for
because
the
they're
state.
getting pressure from outside of that also? Because we're also
Absolutely.
getting pressure from the feds that and union and national union that are, you know, you have to celebrate this, you have to do that, you know. So I can see
But
why
also,
they would do that. They're
is this
trying to.
Who's doing the curriculum? Who's deciding on what the curriculum is? Is it the federal government leaking down into our government, or is it our state school board that's doing it? Is the legislators doing it?
The state school board, it kind of a tricky part. So you have federal standards, right, that are supposed to be around education. And then the state can adopt those standards or define however they want them to look for the state. And then your local school boards are the ones who implement the standards. So your local school board would be the ones who decide what curriculum is used and how those standards are taught on the local level in your classrooms.
But they still have to meet a state requirement. All the local school boards, right? They have to
Right.
meet the state's Common Core or the state's grade to pass or
Their
whatever.
the standards, yes. They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your power on a regular local school board is, hey, we can look over this curriculum that's been sent down from high, and then we can implement our ideas of how this can work in our community, but we cannot get around any of this.
Some things, but the state school board is defining those standards not as in a general term. They're saying this needs to happen, and giving very specific examples rather than providing more of the framework and letting your local school board implement those
So
standards
they're
on a
enjoying
local
some
level.
power. They're
Oh,
enjoying
absolutely.
the power of dictating
Mhm.
how local school boards effectively work.
And on top of that, to answer your question, Jared, about, I like to call those outside pressures as distractions, right? The local school board really should be talking about what are the standards for our state, or how are taxes impacting, funding for schools and those kind of things. But they're so busy focusing on these outside influences that they can't get their job done.
It feels like, just reading into it and what I've read about it and listening to people who are on the school board, it feels to me like they're acting like firefighters, either to implement what the national union sends down or what's brought down by the what do you call it? The Education Administration. What is it?
Are you talking about the Department of Education?
Yeah, Department of Education, which, fun fact, they're established in 77, and not once has the level of education gone up since they were established. It's gone down every year.
Right.
Like they've failed every year. But anyways, that aside, but it does sound like they're firefighters responding to implement or responding to block or responding to, and although I agree with them, responding to just go out and get the word out that this bad thing is being forced on us and I've got to try to stop it. And it does feel like that's a broken system. The Department of Education should be thrown in the garbage in 78, but
right.
It really should, because all it's done is muddy education since it was established. And then it feels like all of the states responded to that by building these big bureaucracies that muddy education further. So no state is running on a success anymore. Not one.
Well, and I think that's where, like I was saying, with the distractions, and there's so many people that talk about, well, the federal government pushed Common Core, they push these things. The state of Utah, they can adopt or, change those standards for what fits for our state. And then our local school boards can adopt and fix those
And
for
that's
the
our
local
governor.
school boards.
Our
right?
governor's the one who let us go with Common Core.
Right. But at this point, I mean, when I was on the local school board, I can't tell you how many policies we were given the model policy and said, you have to adopt this word for word and implement it in your county. And I said, but this isn't what we want in our county, you know, and you can adjust and say for Tooele County School District or whatever. But that was all. Those were, you know, that's all we felt that we could change as a local school board.
You all were individually elected.
Correct.
To serve the community, not the state school board.
Right.
So how many, okay, this makes you a little more qualified than most. How many people on the state school board have served in the local school board?
None that I have found. Yeah. I know there's, there was someone that was telling me that, well, I guess you could say they have served in some capacity as far as being like a previous teacher or a principal, something along those lines, but no, none of them have ever been local school board members before.
So they don't know what it's like to get that letter from on high that dictates how you, when elected,
right,
how you, someone that's going to be accountable to me,
right,
implement their rules that don't reflect the values of Tooele County.
Right. And also, I don't think a lot of people realize too, your state school boards members represent more residents or more people than our state senators. And so a lot of times they're not familiar with what's going on in your local communities. They're not familiar of how to interact with taxpayers when they say, yeah, we're going to cut income funding taxes or whatever it is, because they've never worked with the community that way. They've never worked with the residents and they don't know how to interact and what to do.
You actually had to try to raise money for a school bond here in this county.
Yeah.
And that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of angry people not wanting to give another dime to education because it's doing the insanity. They're trying the same thing over and over. And here you are thinking, well, we're going to need a school because we've got all these junior high kids coming up. We're going to need additional high school. These things don't magically appear.
It is quite
it's a
tough.
catch-22.
It is quite tough when every year when you look at the report card of our education system, and it drops down another grade or percentage of a grade. And every year they say, we need more money.
Right.
And that'll fix it. And not once in the history of ever, not just in the US, but in the history of all of humankind, has that been achieved. Not once.
See, and what I find funny about that is that doesn't happen just with education, but we also saw that happen with homelessness and housing and lots of issues, right? Well, we don't know how to fix it, so we're just going to throw lots of money at it.
We're going to throw more of your money at it. We're going to put you in more dire straits.
Yep.
We're going to make it so that maybe you have to cut your caloric intake for the month, or you have to shut off one of your luxuries so that we can boondoggle and not fix anything. And that's what we get.
Then you get the governor, not this governor, but Governor Herbert, who's doing a State of the State address and mentioning $6 billion. And over the last decade, we've seen graduation rates go up by 11%.
Put me in charge. You'll have graduations at 100%.
He's saying that like it's a net positive, and yet for me, the taxpayer, $6 billion for 11%.
Well, and I think that goes back to kind of what you brought up with the bond and building schools, right? A lot of people say, why are we building these large schools? And then on the other side, you also have them say, well, schools aren't big enough. We need them bigger to accommodate all of our kids.
Because more kids are coming.
We all know that we need schools. We're all going to fight over what those schools look like. Some people say, build a cinder block wall and throw them all in there and they're fine, or cinder block room, right? But what the conversation that no one is having, what about our procurement laws? Like, why are our schools costing so much to the taxpayer? Is there some way that we can look at that? Is there a reason why we use a cost plus system versus something different? Because there's got to be options out there that there's no reason why a high school should cost $100 million. There's no reason.
Absolutely.
But our state school board's not looking at that. We're so focused on dictating what these standards are and these micromanagement of all of our classrooms. They're not looking at the big picture and what really needs to happen on a state level.
That is the definition of insanity. Why build a high school to certain specs when you know that in 5 years it's going to be overfilled. Why not build a high school that has a hybrid sort? So you've got some of the high school is made up of teachers who are just teaching online, and for kids to go to classes online. We learned in COVID that's an option.
So
And
I'm
that's
going to
a lot
interrupt you really
less.
quick. So really quick, right now, current law, you can't build a high school for students that are potentially coming. You can
And
only
that's
build a high
ridiculous.
school or schools for students that are currently in the classroom.
And that's a problem. And who makes that law? Our legislators?
Our legislators,
Can
again,
I-
it's that three-headed beast. So why are we not working with our legislators to accommodate? We see the growth. You drive through Tooele County and you can see the fields being torn up and
We're
new
the
houses coming
fastest
in.
growing in the state
Can
right now.
Can
But
I
we
be
can't accommodate the growth.
the crazy person that thinks outside the box?
I'd love to hear it. Yes.
I'm tired of being violated by the government at every turn in my life.
hmm
Yet, here in a few months, all these big schools are going to sit empty for 3 months.
hmm
Dead empty. You might have a janitor in
You have
there
summer
painting a
school.
wall.
Our high schools aren't. So that's part of the, and I don't think a lot of people realize,
Yeah.
especially in our rural
Well,
schools, our high schools are community centers.
Yeah. And
Okay.
they do summer schools and
Why?
teaching.
Yeah.
And
At what
sports
capacity?
Well,
I mean, here's
you're right. Not 100%.
word for
There's
word,
definitely some.
or even 30%. I'll bet you
Oh.
don't reach 15% capacity. I'll bet you don't. Because
I know
if you had
Stansbury, I would
summer
say
school,
50%.
If you had summer school at that rate, there would be a revolution on the other side.
Yeah.
100%. Parents and kids.
Well, I'm saying it's more
But-
than just the schools that use them, though. It's
Sure.
the communities that
Sure.
are using them, right?
We need to expand on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that
You
or
know,
you go
why
year
can't
round,
you? Why can't
which
you?
would piss a lot
You
of
can
people
go
off.
year round, and there's again a revolution. You want to see teenagers take arms to the streets? That's how you get teenagers on the streets with guns. But
Lots
I mean,
of schools go year round.
why can't you? Yeah, elementary schools when they don't know any better.
No, I mean, some districts are year round districts. I know in Texas, they have year round school.
In Salt Lake,
They-
there's a couple of districts.
They also
Aren't
have to
they
air
elementary though?
Mhm.
They don't have any high schools in
No.
year round.
Right,
have to
just
have-
elementary.
They
Yeah,
have to
because
spend money on air conditioning and on heat year round, which gets expensive.
because high schoolers are dangerous. Don't be pissing off no high schoolers. Let's just calm that talk down. We don't want to burn the city down just today. Maybe next year. But is there any other ways we can think outside the box to use that property? Maybe on a rental system.
Well, I can give you an example. So,
Yes.
Little
right
closer.
now we have 3 high schools that use Pratt Aquatic Center for their swim teams,
Mhm.
right? And then when Desert Peak comes online, that means 4 high schools at one swimming facility.
But Deseret Peak facility is making a pool that could be used by all 4.
Right. But before that agreement and before that change happened, there was a lot of talk with the Stansbury Service Agency about using one of their pools. And then there was also talk about building a rec center out there, right? So that possibly Stansbury and Grantsville could use that pool, Deseret Peak and Tooele could use Pratt, whatever the circumstances were. When we first put that pool on the bond, because you still have to pay for it, right? And the school district would put money in and then the bond would pay for the rest of it. The voters said no, they did not want
Well,
that.
let me ask you.
I should clarify. Stansbury said yes. The rest of the county
Well, of
said
course,
no.
Stansbury said yes. They get a pool out of the deal.
Right.
They're still
Let me
paying the
go
most.
David on this.
Stansbury pays the highest tax rates in the county.
Right.
So,
David's not here, so I've got to go David on this.
he's here online. Hi,
Yes.
David.
David, this is for you. Have anyone ever done a breakdown of our tax rate to athletics breakdown?
What do you mean tax rate? Do you mean income for each school?
No, it's say
athletics
from
brings
say
the
from
most
the
money.
say from the taxes I pay, how much of that is peeled off for athletics? Wherein, say, proto-Americans across the pond there, the British, they don't have athletics in their school per se. It's a club that you join at a cost after.
Right.
Has anyone ever done that breakdown to see maybe could we get the price of our education down if we quit involving the what could be
there's
extracurricular
fighting words.
athletics?
If you were in Texas right now, someone would hang you. Because in Texas, those schools have stadiums bigger than Rice Eccles for their high school
I know
team.
this,
But it also brings in a ton of money to the school, which then trickles through other parts of the school. It is huge.
I would honestly like to see the breakdown of that
So
if
I know
it justifies it.
the state school board recently finished up, not that recent, maybe a year and a half ago, a study they did on extracurricular fees. And what they found was, of course, how different, not only district-wise from district to district, how difference in prices or fees they would charge, but also from school to school.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, of course, football was one of the most expensive,
Mm-hmm.
cheerleading, those kind of things, right?
And all optional.
Right. But that's the thing, is they're optional. So the families can participate in them if they want to. And now
Sure.
school districts also have to provide a waiver for the families that
Sure.
can't pay, so
How
they can still
about building the
participate.
stadium?
So what I was going to say, though, is with that being part of the conversation, so my son plays football,
Mhm.
right? There's not one football coach that does not put their academics before football.
Okay.
Maybe they're saying it just in front of parents, but that's a big push,
Sure.
right?
I mean, when I went to high school, he taught special ed, so his academics was sit
Right.
down and shut up.
No, he means
I wonder if you
that
had
he
our
expects-
coach,
He
Coach
thinks-
Leslie.
No, I had Butler in
Okay.
Grantsville.
Doesn't that mean that the coach actually expects the
Yep.
players to get high academics?
And my son
Before
also
they play.
took a football camp in Salt Lake, and all of those coaches said the same thing as well. So
Okay,
it's not,
but
it's all
and it's not that I'm
pushing that,
not
right?
saying the coaches are doing that. What I'm saying is square footage of the school
Mhm.
plus square footage of the land the school sits on,
Okay.
is that a competing argument there?
I don't think it would be, because you can't just take out just for sports, because you have, like, the football field is used for your marching band.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Cheerleading.
cheerleaders are out there.
I would say
Your track and
if
field,
football went into a
soccer.
rec system, cheerleaders would join.
I don't know.
What
I
would
don't
you
know. Maybe
use
they
it?
would, I guess.
What would you use the cheerleaders for?
I don't understand, because
If you pulled other sports out,
football brings cash money
Brings a
to
lot.
the school.
does it break
It
even?
absolutely does.
Oh,
I bet
it
it
brings
brings more.
more.
Okay.
It actually at
Does
least
it bring
in our
more
school,
to break up that acreage that they're using?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
I would
yeah.
like to do the math on that for
it
the
might-
land maintenance, for the water, for
Okay.
all of that.
I mean-
And that's an honest, and I'm not saying you have to adjust it, but someone's got to take Dave's place, because Dave would say, why don't we have mathletes in our schools?
You do.
Yeah, there's math competitions all the time.
Sure,
Math
sure.
clubs,
I
German
actually
clubs,
was talking
Spanish club.
to.
Does Twilla have a math club?
I know they used to when Mrs. Warby was there. I don't know
Did
if they
they?
still
Oh.
do.
They all listen. At Granger High School, when I was there, our stadium, our buses, all the stuff we used. I paid a fee to be a cheerleader, but
Mhm.
all the stuff we used came out of the money that is brought in just from the football program. That didn't even count the basketball program. And what they said in
Were you talking Coach Leslie at Granger?
okay, and what they said is
No.
not only
Twila.
At Twilla?
not only does it fund many things in the school that they would not otherwise be able to fund, it also keeps kids out of trouble. It's a great way for kids to learn teamwork, discipline, things like that. And the schools hold them to a higher level in grade point average in order to participate. For me, it was 3.0. Our football team was a 2.5. That's no easy feat. And you get so much money from these
Look,
championships.
you don't need to convince me, because
Here's another thing to think about, though, too, that I think a lot of people
what
don't.
percent of the student body is involved in these athletics?
They're
Well-
not paying for the athletics. So whoever's paying those athletics and whoever's paying to go to those games are paying for that program. They're going to build the field because that field has to represent soccer, cheer, the band, the track team, football, baseball. All these things are already inside the property. already.
And not also, I don't know how you would be able to determine this, but when there is a football game, what ends up happening? So let's say Stansbury's playing Cottonwood High, right?
Mhm.
Cottonwood High's families all come out here.
Mhm.
They buy gas, they buy food, they spend time out here. I'd like to say they go shopping, but we know that's not true.
They
Right.
spend time and then they
Yeah.
leave, and we benefit.
Every game my son had a football game, we went to Logan, we went down to Provo. Every single game we went out to dinner because he would have to be there early. So we would go, and then we would have to go eat afterwards too because he was hungry again.
Do you think, just going to throw this out there, Cottonwood High to Stansbury Park, what percent of the people who drive around that mountain stay for dinner on this side of that mountain?
I guarantee a large percent.
I think a lot more than you think because you end up sitting here for a while.
I guarantee the old man's like, that little bugger better get in the car quick because I'm driving around the mountain and I'm hitting a real restaurant.
Well, then what about when they do the big soccer tournament down at Deseret Peak?
Okay.
They run in, they grab food. They
Or the
come back.
baseball tournaments down there.
That you may have.
Actually, when they did the baseball tournaments, they didn't have enough down at Deseret Peak, so they had to use all the local high schools.
Yeah.
Or like next week, drama, state championships are coming to Stansbury High. They're going to be there all day long.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to have to eat out here somewhere.
And it's true. When I would go to away games, I always got something to eat by where I was.
Where was your away game?
Well, we had one in Twilla, was an away game when we
Okay.
played Twilla High School. And it's the only time in my young life, but I went to the Dairy Delight place and I fell in love with the ice cream. Never anticipated eating at Dairy Delight.
I just promised the families that come out here, I would bet if you got
I think you're wrong.
5% to eat on this side of that mountain, you'd be doing good.
I think you're wrong because you don't
One,
understand that
If they're
wait
playing in
time
Stansbury, what do they
families
got?
have.
Hug Hess?
Yeah. Well, I always
They've
told
got-
everyone to go to Vista Linda, but
They've
that's
got
'cause that's my
the
yeah,
pizza
favorite.
place.
But then they've got to drive further into the county.
They've got
Right.
home style pizza
They've got to
place.
drive. If they drive 10 minutes more,
If they're
they're
driving,
eating on their
they
side
got
of the mountain.
McDonald's, they've
Do
got
you
Taco
know
Bell.
what a
they've got,
14-year-old is like after a football game?
they're ravished.
He's ready to eat my steering wheel.
And my dad would have said, I don't care. You can wait.
Yeah. Well, I
And
know.
he'd have been feeding me Spam burgers at home.
My brothers played football.
And I'm
It
not arguing
was
against
a
you.
family
One-
thing. We
Yeah.
got dinner right after the game, no matter
I've
where
got
we
to
played.
I've got to take the argument for David. I've got to. Me.
David, make your own argument. If
I
you're
am.
watching.
David made this argument all the time. Probably made it to you last time around.
Yep.
But
He did.
it is like right now, here in a couple of weeks, that big old building right there is going to sit dormant.
Deseret Peak?
No,
High school.
there's the elementary school right there. It's just
Oh.
going to sit dormant.
Well,
Yeah.
as somebody who has rented space from every high school, I have rented it in off season and on season. I pay money and I use their space. Here's another thing. If you eliminated high school football, soccer, any of these
I
sports,
turned this argument into that.
your graduation rates will drop.
Mhm.
And here's why. Because people who don't have a means to get scholarships by their skill, and maybe they're better at football than they are at physics, and this is an opportunity for them to get scholarships, for them to have a reason to keep their grades up. I would fight for sports in schools at all times. And this is coming from a mom whose kids couldn't care less about sports.
I could break another
But
argument
let me
into that
finish.
one.
If there was a high school that's a charter that is focused on STEM and doesn't do all the sports stuff, I would put my kids in it.
Mhm.
But charter schools have to have grassroots funding and they have to have people ready to fund them. And I wouldn't put a football stadium in there. However, even the charter school that my kids are in now have a soccer team, have volleyball teams, and they are doing wonderfully. And the kids involved have far more interest in keeping their grades up than the kids not involved. And it gives them an outlet and it gives girls especially opportunities for scholarship.
Absolutely. And I think, especially in our rural communities, I think about Wendover, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What else do those kids have to do out there?
Right.
Right?
What do
But
those people have to do?
They
That's-
play basketball.
I went
and that's
to
what their focus
I went
is.
to the convention. You were there in Delta.
Mhm.
Did you look at the size of their gymnasium?
Mm.
It was giant. Do you know why? I've been to Delta on a weekend, on a Friday night. Everyone in town is at their local high school game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's football, if it's basketball. Small rural towns, you know this.
I just wonder if it
Grantsville
was
shows up when Grantsville's playing.
if it was
It's
a club, would it get the same reaction?
So that
And
same,
would the cost of it be foisted on the general populace while taxes keep skyrocketing, while our
it's a
education
club,
outcomes
but-
keep plummeting?
let me tell you what I think would end up happening, because they brought this actually up at the camp that my son did in Salt Lake, that you are seeing a lot more sports go towards the club, right? But then that ends up being just for the families that can afford it.
Yep.
And then you have a lot of kids out on the streets, for lack of a better term, with nothing to do, no direction, going, well, I'll never get a scholarship now, so what am I going to do?
Well,
I'm
and
just
I have
gonna
no reason to turn my
hang out
reports in or get good grades because I'm not having to meet any certain requirements.
Why-
And a coach will demand requirements, schools will demand it. And the club for the soccer club that Rial's private academy,
Mhm.
no one in this room could afford that.
Right.
I don't even know what you guys make, but I know we couldn't afford it because the people who are in that club, they fly here.
But is it that way because all outside of that is absorbed by the taxpayer in the schools?
I disagree.
No. Because
I don't know.
well, so let me
England's not any wealthier than we are. Matter of fact, they're
Every English school has a place to play cricket. They also have a place to play soccer. That is part of their school curriculum. So if
Is
you're
it?
telling me
is it
that
because
England's high schools don't have that, you are
my
off.
understanding it's all private clubs.
No. They have it because boys need to run. Boys need throughout the day to get energy out. So do girls. But this is a way not only for that, but for them to get kids excited about
I'm just throwing the thought out there. It's fine.
idle hands, man. You want kids involved in clubs, and they've got clubs for everything. I was the president of my German club. I was cheerleader, and I had to have a 3.0 GPA, so I got a 3.8 GPA. But it kept me engaged. A debate club. I was in debate club. These things are for everyone if the kids want to get them. And most of them are grassroots started.
Mhm.
So that debate club, the school still makes sure they have a room to practice in. The school still takes them to state championships. That costs money on behalf of the school and maybe doesn't make as much as far as viewers paying to get into a debate club championship. But you know who pays for it? The football teams. The football games that they make. I mean, if you got rid of sports in high school, unless it was a charter that was specifically designed for the STEMs instead of all, and you would still get, if average kids could go to that school and focus on that, that would be great. But a lot of kids are sports oriented, and the only chance they get at scholarships is going to be on the field, girls and boys. And that's another way to it. I think you'd see higher graduation rates, a lot higher, even if they just made the standards of playing football higher. You have to have a 3.0 GPA.
Mhm.
That would be crazy. It'd be crazy because football players at our school had a hard enough time with a 2.5.
Total combined
It would
weight
help.
of the whole team weighs like 1,000 pounds.
But
It's all
imagine
skinny, smart guys.
not only the scholarship opportunities for their ability to play a sport, but now they're getting higher test scores on ACT. They're graduating. These things could all be done, but they're done by local school boards. They're not done by the state.
Right. Yep. And they could work with the local communities and what fits best for that local community. Absolutely.
So you have something that no one else has.
Mhm.
Experience from the local level.
Yep.
Now, I remember when you were running for school board, it was a nonpartisan race.
Yep.
And yet you were adamant to get in front of delegates to
Mhm.
find out what's bugging them, what's going on in your kids' school. And you had never been in the school board before.
Nope.
It's the first time I met you. You said, do you mind if I tag along to this event? And I'm like, you're running for an office? Of course not. Even if it's nonpartisan, you still wanted to hear from people.
Absolutely.
You are the first person I have ever had join in an event like that was running in a nonpartisan race or running for school board, period. So you got my respect almost immediately because you went into a place listening in on where their big problems are.
Mhm.
And then you're saying, well, how do you feel about your kids' education? what do you want to see? And man, people opened up to you like a sieve.
Absolutely.
And this was before COVID.
Right.
Now, I bet people are just awake. COVID woke people up in a different way where their education became
I think it
front and
actually
center.
it woke up different groups of people. Absolutely.
Engaged parents who were watching and teaching through
help parents really understand and ask lots of questions. What's going on in my child's education? How can I help? What can we do better? But I also think it also opened up a lot of teachers' minds too. What can we do better? How can we work with our students? All those kind of things. So yeah, no, you're right. And I think as hard as COVID was, there were a lot of things that we learned from that time. And one of the things that I think is something that we learned is it's really hard for a student to just go and sit in a classroom for a certain amount of hours every day and sit in front of a TV or a screen or whatever. That cannot replace what our teachers do.
Or being read a curriculum instead of a teacher getting that opportunity to
that
teach
teacher-student relationship and the way that they work and communicate with their students can and does make all the difference in the world.
What changes have been put in place because of that? Because of those lessons learned?
Well, like that's probably one of the hardest things that we saw. So during COVID, you saw a lot of the push towards the technology and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, after post-COVID, I'm looking at my nephews especially, but also my nieces.
Mm-hmm.
They've all checked out. They've got a feeling like the schools and the teachers, because I mean, there was teachers, as my nephew at Stansbury, he had a teacher who also ran for state school board back then. He fought to have the stay at home stuff, and the teacher, I mean, it was ran as a Democrat. I know everyone, surprise, whatever, but he fought for it. And I asked him one time, I said, you're running for this to represent the people, yet you're fighting to punish them.
To keep kids at home.
But anyways, yeah, he was fighting for that. But anyways, my thing is my nephew's checked out.
Well, and I think a lot of kids
and I'm
have,
seeing
and
that
that's
so
one of the
much.
things that I
like they don't see school as mattering at all. I think they get the feeling that achievement in school doesn't matter.
Right.
Like they're going to graduate you if you can consume oxygen and breathe out CO2. They're going to give you a certificate. So showing up, they don't care. Getting grades, they don't care. And we've kind of perverted our society to where now, like a bachelor's degree is your entry into a life that a high school diploma would earn you 20 years ago. That 20 years before that, back to the argument, just being able to follow instructions would earn you a good life. And then they perverted that to where high school diplomas, you have to have that to meet this level. And now it's the bachelor's degree. In another 20 years, what? You got to pack a master's around to get a job driving a forklift?
A lot of those degrees aren't about the actual education. They're about social issues, and they're fluffy.
Well, and I think one of the things that, because I agree with you, right? I see it with my freshmen every day. Mom, I don't want to go to school. Well, what do your grades look like? I'm getting straight A's. How do you fight that? Like, you're doing well in school. How do I say, well, I guess you can miss today, or no, you can't, whatever the circumstances are. But my question is first, why as state school board, even local school boards and parents, why are we not looking at this situation?
Yeah.
Why don't our students want to go to school anymore?
I think COVID, with them being rubber banded to where before that they're told you're the most important thing. We're all here for you. Oh, there's a flu that hurts people.
Right.
1 in 800 million. We got to shut you down, send you home.
Right.
We got to forget about you. The kids are like, kids aren't dumb.
Kids missed their own graduations. They missed proms.
It's not
they missed such important moments in development with their friends and their social.
It's not just
My daughter was in kindergarten, and so every time she's like, Mom, why do I have to go to school? Because she missed that last half of her year.
It's not just that.
Understand right. That's critical.
They got told you're coming back in. Oh no, now you're going back home. No, now you're coming. The kids, they're not dumb. They look around, they said, it's like, say you fed your kids when you felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the kids would look at you like you're a means of sustenance?
Well, but I think
That's how they see the schools,
I agree.
and they're not voicing it.
No, they're
I
not.
think
But
they're
I also
missing
think
I
something
have
else.
I have a plethora of nieces and nephews, and I'm looking at all of them to a T
right.
are showing the same revelation.
Well, but then you also look at the other side of it too. Why are our teachers quitting at record numbers? Why does no one want to be a teacher anymore?
Because good teachers don't get rewarded. Bad teachers.
So where is this disconnect? Why are we not working on how do we help our students? Because we know there's research. There's tons of research out there that shows
1977.
if they work together, the students will excel and they will do better. So I talked to, she's actually the math curriculum director at the Tooele County School District today. She was saying our kids are taking some of the most advanced classes ever. Back, 10, 15 years ago, AP calculus classes, we couldn't fill them. There'd be one
Absolutely
or two kids,
not.
right?
Yeah.
Now, I know we've had lots of growth and lots of changes, but our kids are learning at such a quick
How many of the
rate.
kids are learning those though?
Their classes are full. She's every year adding a new
Okay.
calculus class because they're doing so well in these advanced math classes.
I have to know. Okay. I've seen how charter schools follow a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's not by the masses, it's per child.
Right.
So if your son is coming home with straight A's and he's bored out of his mind and hates school, why haven't we taken what we've learned through COVID or through charters
Mm-hmm.
to test the kids 3 times in the year, see where they are in the year, and then adjust their classes or their level according to their knowledge? Why is the public school system not doing this? Because your child could potentially, a freshman, be at a senior level,
Right.
graduate early, and then either go on to college, go into the military, get into a trade, and be an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we continually teaching every kid like they're all the same when our kids are developing differently, we're learning differently? And had someone done that with me, I probably would have graduated my sophomore year
Right.
because I was so bored and I was getting straight A's.
Well, and that's one of the nice things about with our secondary schools, with the high schools right now, because they're on a 5x5 schedule. So if you don't know, they go to 5 classes one day and then 5 classes the next, right? Most of our students actually could graduate when they're juniors because they take all of their required classes before then, and then their junior, senior year are
Fun classes.
like the elective classes, right? The way that it's kind of set up and the idea behind it, though, is that they would take classes at Tooele Tech or the CLC. So then that way they can learn those trades or those certificates so they can get jobs that maybe don't require a degree of some sort, or they can kind of, pick and choose.
You get halfway into
like I'm
CNA or do
or
some
whatever,
mechanic.
right?
Now, how is
but
that?
then they can go, I don't really like a CNA. I don't want to do nursing, so I'm going to do welding instead. And they're not spending college money
They should
on
really
figuring out what they want to
the
do.
CNA course, the bedpan portion should be day one.
I
Because
think-
instead they get them all committed. I learned how to do light phlebotomy and now I know. And then like they're committed, they're into it like a year and a half. And then they change a bedpan and they go,
Nope,
I just
don't wanna
wasted
do
a
it.
So
year
when
and a
I was
half.
in high school, our school was the first school to allow college classes on campus.
Mhm.
We were the very first school, and I was able to take my English courses. I paid for the class, but I paid like
Probably
$50,
$60, yeah.
and yet it would have cost me hundreds in college. So that when I graduated, I was so close to my associates
Mhm.
at graduation that I went right into college and could finish my associate, start on my bachelor's in the first 2 years.
Right.
That should be in every high school.
And it is in most of them.
And so, but then again, I still think they should be watching children rise testing. So the beginning of the year, they know where your level is.
Right.
You never change their grade. So
Right.
they're always in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. But you go, oh, this student understands trigonometry. Let's put him in a senior math class. And that's just where he goes.
Right.
And then our AP class is still a thing.
Yep. Yep.
So
They're still
you
in.
have college classes, you have AP classes. My 10th grader should be able to, if he's already learned everything he can about English, vocabulary, all of that, he's done the AP course, let him go into a site now, let him start college classes in 9th grade, 10th grade, because he's excelled to that level.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of the year, if he's getting a D or a C, he obviously doesn't understand it. So next year, he's going to go back to the level up. And we're just going to keep going according to each kid. If charters can do it, why can't public schools do it?
I can tell you one of the big reasons, the difference in the amount of kids. So if you look at Stansbury High, for example, they have almost 3,000 students. There are almost 700 kids over capacity. They don't even have enough desks for all the kids. I mean, you're looking at classrooms full, 40 kids in some classes?
Again, another argument to have mobile options for kids to attend online.
Or why a long time ago, they were talking about it during the legislative session. I want to say it was about 20 years ago. There was a bill passed that was supposed to reduce class sizes, right? Schools are supposed to receive extra funding to reduce those class sizes because we know that around 20, 25 kids is ideal.
For learning and for the teacher.
It's not getting to our classrooms. It's not helping them reduce those class sizes.
Where's it getting stalled?
Well, that's
administrators
if you ask some people, it says, well, it goes to this program, or it gets lost in the WPU, or it goes towards scholarships. It goes to all these different things, but it definitely doesn't go to reducing classroom sizes.
Isn't there a budget that is required to be spent on the actual thing the budget's designed for? Because I know in government, certain things go into a budget, they can't
We're
be touched.
in America, Holly.
I know, but isn't there something like that for schools?
Well, and there is. So you have, you have your WPU, and you have your minimum school program, and then you have all the line items below that are restricted funding, and they all are supposed to go towards whatever that program.
Line items, 7 line items?
We have over 20 at least.
Wow.
Yeah, where most states have 9 or 10 at the most. And I know that's something that they're working on. They're working on, putting more of that into the WPU so schools have more flexibility with it. But I think it's just it's one of those things that was funded 20 years ago for this purpose. And because our classroom sizes and growth and everything have kind of outpaced whatever that funding is.
So has children with special needs that are in public school.
Yep.
That is its own animal. Yeah. And we want these kids in school with their peers, but they can't sometimes be in classrooms with their peers and not be disruptive. They should have that one-on-one therapy, counselors /
And that's
teacher.
another thing too. We don't have enough staff, support staff in any of our schools either, right?
So funding's going there.
Right. So if you look at, like the paras that work with the special needs kids, or even work with kids who are struggling in math or whatever, they'd make no money. Or our bus drivers, right? So our bus drivers, they don't have college degrees. Maybe some do, right? But they are required to have their CDLs. But that's not enough. They're still considered part-time employees. So they don't qualify for sick time. They don't qualify for any health benefits. They don't get any of those things.
Are the bus drivers aren't they paid for by the county?
The school
or are they
district?
paid for by the school district?
Yeah. And because of the way our state employee benefits are set up, the district can't offer them any kind of benefits. So if they're sick or if there's an issue, that's on that bus driver.
So pretty much you're stuck with retirees or stay-at-home moms with a CD. Let me say this again. Stay-at-home moms with a CDL that are free in the morning, which would therefore negate their reason to be a stay-at-home mom to take care of the kids, to get their kids to school. Okay, yeah.
Or they could drive around the mountain and work for a company making 6 figures with their CDL.
That's not complicated at all.
Okay, so
but then again, you can't literally. I'm laying this out right now. The teat is dry. The taxpayers have been ravaged by everything.
Right.
So you can't go back to that trough.
75% of your property tax is going to the school board.
But that's what I mean. But
the schools.
And I'm not saying that you're, anyone in particular.
Well,
right now I'm paying at least 50% in everything I make into taxes in one form or another.
Right.
Which is, think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
We overthrew a goddamn king for 3%.
Right.
And you get 50 cents for every dollar you make.
Well, I think about my son, the Marine, right? Made a little bit over $20,000 last year.
That's what they're making nowadays, huh?
To serve our country.
You know what
my first
full My first full year in the Army, and what I made?
Hmm.
Under 13,000.
Oh, I could not believe it. But what I wanted to say though is, and I agree with you, I think our taxpayers are pushed to the limit. They cannot offer another
We
penny,
can't bear
right?
it anymore.
But I guess my question for you is that a Tooele County thing, or do you think that's a state of Utah?
I think that's a
I think it's a
nationwide
national
thing.
thing.
Okay.
Right now, we've got a surge in homeless
Right.
that has
In
no
crime.
drug addiction and no mental issues. That's where we're at tax wise. We've got a surge in homelessness
We have housing
that
shortage.
doesn't have the underlying issues riding with it.
Right.
We have job shortages.
And I'm saying this, people need to understand this. That's scary time.
Yeah, I agree.
That is time when people start experimenting with rags and bottles of alcohol and a torch.
People
Well,
are
so-
1 or 2 paychecks away from homelessness.
Right. So I guess
Any one of us.
because there was, of course, during the legislative session, there was a lot of conversations about federal overreach and not taking federal dollars for X, Y, or Z anymore, right? But my question is, if we don't take those federal dollars for whatever reason, for whatever program, that means taxes have to go up unless you're going to not have those programs anymore. So what are our options?
Well, if you don't take money from the federal government for education, and that means they butt out, and Utah decides as legislators or school boards decide what our curriculum is, and it's Utah based, Utah ran, and then we decide, how our schools are going to be built. We are going to build schools too big because they are going to get full. We are going to go around these stupid restrictions and building permits. And we're going to have schools that are designed specifically for the teachers to be in there and teach mobily, just to a classroom that tunes in. And we are going to have books online so kids aren't buying books, and we're saving money there. And then we have the rec areas where you do have all the sports and the football teams and all of that bringing in. But I think we have to cinch our belts somewhere. And if we got rid of the federal government, yes, we would lose some funding for sure.
right.
But what would we gain by taking it back? We used to be the most literate state in the union.
Right.
I remember reading it in 2002 when the Olympics were coming and they were touting about Utah's statistics. In 22 years, how we have fallen.
Have we? So I researched it. I was looking at it over the last couple of days and just to see where we sit as far as
literacy
education,
or
just
educated?
education in general as a state. And every site, everything I pulled up, it was showing our state of Utah in the top 10.
Well, we were number 1.
Right. Which we
And
want to be always,
We want,
right?
yes, so does every state.
Right.
But over the course of, and that's when Common Core was put in place. This is way after. Common
Right.
Core was a big problem because it separated children from parents and the ability to do homework together. It taught kids this whole extra go around rather than just memorize your times tables and you won't have to do what is all of this?
Right.
It complicated things where it may not need to be complicated, but it also was a program that our governor welcomed. And it was like, okay, now what? How do we
That's
how
a
do we
whole nother
manage
subject.
this?
What was
And we're on the hook to the federal government financially. But what is the federal government providing us financially?
Well, but that's the thing that I worry about is I don't want to see us become like Illinois, where our taxes, our property taxes are $10,000, $20,000, right? Because their education system, most of the kids that go to school, if you live in Chicago, you don't go to public education, you go to a private
You have
school.
to, because
right?
public schools are not only dangerous, but their graduation rates are astounding. Their teachers' unions are astoundingly highly paid,
Right.
and the teachers hate their jobs.
Right. So at what point do we say, yes, our system right now is not perfect. Yes, we realize that there are issues. There are things that we need to work on. But instead of dealing with all these distractions and everything going on, let's focus on the things we are doing well. What can we improve on? How do we make this better, instead of revamping the whole system and saying we're going to try going down this avenue or this avenue or this avenue? It's almost like we're trying to take mud and throw it at the wall and see what sticks. We know the things that work for our state. We know what works in our education.
We continue
to keep going. I'm going to try
insanity.
this. I'm going to keep trying this. And it doesn't make any sense.
What does the federal government, Department of Education, finance in our state?
Mostly special education.
So special education,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not buying our schools.
Nope.
They're not paying us per kid in the seats.
Nope.
And they're not giving us a curriculum.
Is that last comment comes from a gentleman named Tony?
That's my husband.
Yeah. He wants to bring back the corporal punishment, and I like it.
So O'Malley says, how do we compare to other countries? Sadly, the United States is not high compared to other countries. There's a whole lot of other countries, though. And in Asia, I mean, they go to school on Saturdays, and education is, I mean, demanded, required. They have a whole different culture.
Well, I think that brings up also a good point. So you mentioned earlier you were president of the German club. Is that right? Something?
Das ist richtig.
Yeah. So I don't know a word of German, but my 14-year-old is fluent in German.
Volkswagen.
Yep, that's me. Because of the dual language immersion program, right?
Yeah,
in our county.
Which I think is awesome.
I do too. I agree.
I think that is, I know my niece and nephew, they're doing the French. They love it.
Right. Yeah. It is just to see the way his brain works versus my other children. Like I literally can see his brain working, and my other kids are smart as well, but it's just interesting to see the difference of how he thinks through a problem, all because of learning another language.
And he started at first grade?
He started at first grade.
So that's the prime time if you're going to teach a child a second language, because their brain develops totally different.
Absolutely.
Grabbing that second language.
Yeah.
And in every other country in Europe, all the children are dual language.
Yeah.
They're taught their language, of course. So in Germany, you learn German, you learn English.
Yeah.
Then you can pick up a third, French, Italiano, whatever it is. Language is taught just as much as math, just as much as English.
Well, and not only that, but they require their teachers, and the amount of education and student teaching and level of degrees that they have to get just to become a teacher. So one of our German teachers that's actually at Twilla Junior right now that teaches, they teach English half the time. Well, I guess not at the junior high level. Either way, she's a German teacher. She has 3 master's degrees.
Yeah.
Well, but let's also say this, okay. In Europe, you're going to learn more languages, because that'd be honestly, it's like comparing what we speak here. Say Colorado has a separate language, and Nevada has another, so they will learn it because of that. Also, please don't anyone fight to turn us into that shithole Europe.
It's not that.
Because Europe is
you're
drowning.
Doing a child a service by teaching them dual languages, because their brains
No, I agree with that.
can actually think
I agree with that,
differently.
but let's not fight to bring us to European standards of their social welfare program, because they are drowning. They're drowning. Europe is on its way out.
Let's talk about Asia then.
Okay, Asia. Now, Japan is different, but also you have to change our whole culture, because they're what do they call it? They're a legalist culture, where their culture is, we're a shame base. They're a legalist culture. We'd have to start 1,000 years ago to achieve that tomorrow.
I get that, but you see, the standards they demand on young people, and then the efforts it takes to get them there.
I agree.
It is all involved in culture, and many learn English and Japanese at a very young age, Chinese, because they understand that knowing a second language as a child, being able to speak 2 languages opens your brain up to learn things that we could never imagine. It is a benefit.
I agree. I think music does the same thing.
Yes.
Well,
music and learning, but you're learning notes. Notes also could be considered another language, just like sign language.
I agree.
But I also think if you look at these other countries and the things that they are doing, that's really good and well, and for whatever, is they involve the family.
Absolutely.
And education is a priority. right? So a lot of times you have families for whatever reason where education may not be that much of a priority. So then it's just on the kid to figure it out for themselves.
And that is a lot, especially in our
culture.
in our urban communities.
Mm-hmm.
That is really big. A lot of those kids are
We've seen,
if they make it out because they made it out.
Yeah.
we've seen parents look at it like it's your job. It's the teacher's job to raise my child
Yeah.
from here
Right.
to here
Or
and educate my child. And they just kind of go,
yeah,
well,
or it's just on the child, right? And I mean, they're still children. They need to figure it out for themselves. And now they're put into a situation where they're supposed to advocate for themselves. They are supposed to, whatever it is, and they're still learning on their own. So,
Sure.
you know, one of the things that there's been a lot of talk, I'm sure you guys have heard of the teen center that
Yeah.
up in Davis County
We
and
heard
then
about
even
it.
at Twila High, right? So the
I-
idea,
yeah, Natalie Klein was mentioning how they want to do these teen centers where the parent's not engaged and these teens can go if they're homeless, if they need clothes. if they-
Okay. Oh
remember
yeah,
that?
yeah.
so the idea actually of the teen center is, yeah, you're right. So if the parent is not involved, right, this is for those students that they still want to do a good job, right? They want to get good grades. They're still attending class. They still are part of the school community, right? But for whatever reason, whatever's going on at home, maybe they don't have running water. Maybe they don't have somewhere that they're living.
But maybe they
But-
have a fight with a parent because that's a lot of it too. Parents are getting left out because the teen is unhappy at home.
No, so from my understanding, because I actually talked to the operations director for the school district, and it's not like I can just go, well, I'm mad at my mom and dad today, so I'm going to go stay at the school for a few days and shower and change my clothes and do what no, it doesn't work that way. These are for students that honestly want to be at school. They want to do a good job, but there's circumstances that are outside of their own control.
Like a
Where-
parent that doesn't want to confirm their sexual identity.
No,
Their
that would not classify as part of why they would be involved or part of the teen center.
Can I side rail you for a second?
Absolutely.
How big of this, because right now, if you touch the internet, this gender identity is all anyone talks about. Is that in the schools, in your experience, is that really as big an effect as, well, everything makes it seem?
I don't think so. So I can give you, I mean, I don't know for sure in every single school, right? But in my neighborhood, I live in very far northern Stansbury Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of children, lots of things going on. And I know of one child that is transgender out of probably 1,000 kids that live in that neighborhood. So I think it's kind of one of those things where you have lots of conversations. And usually when you have those conversations, whatever you pay the most attention to, that's when it gets bigger.
This is happening at our school board. It's happening in legislature. Like they're trying to change the laws for everyone
Mhm,
for that tiny, tiny percentage.
mhm.
How do you feel about that?
Well, again, that's where I'm saying they need to stay in their lane. These are things that we are creating so many laws and bills and legislation, whatever you want to say, that we don't need.
Amen.
We are to the point of where, I mean, we can't even have a conversation anymore because I have a conflict with something as my teacher is teaching me.
Yeah.
I have to have a law that says now I can have a conversation with my teacher. Really? Why can't you sit down and say, you know what? This is against my religious beliefs, or this is against whatever is going on in my family. I need to have a conversation with you. Instead of going, now we need to have a law passed saying that you don't have to do X, Y, and Z. And we're seeing it not only in our schools, but you're seeing it in your jobs. You're seeing it
It's DEI though.
in the 600 bills that were passed this
It's
session.
DEI, and parents have been awakened to critical race theory in school.
Well, but
DEI
then I
in
ask
school.
everyone for examples. Where is the critical race theory in our Twila County schools?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it
But,
either.
and I don't know because I'm in a charter. I don't know if the curriculum's different in my school versus in the public schools. But you do see you do see one-sided agendas getting pushed through the curriculum, say on global warming, with no source cited. And so my 8th grader's learning about how catastrophic it's going to be in 50 years and Florida is going to be underwater. And I said, why don't you ask him to cite a source? He can't. And he won't, because this is the curriculum. Well, I'm sorry. There are scientists now saying that is actually untrue. And if you cannot predict what my weather's going to be like tomorrow, and you're listening to a groundhog who lied, how are you going to predict what the weather's going to be like in 10 years, 20 years, 15 years? And everybody who has predicted this catastrophic global warming or ice age has been wrong.
Right. Or
so you're going to teach my kid this. I should be able to have an opt-out option to say, you're teaching this like a religion with no sources cited. I don't want you teaching my son religion and science. Don't teach him this crap either.
I just want to throw out there, David showed up and made a comment. David, I hope you're here a few minutes ago when I was taking arrows for you.
I am feisty.
Taking arrows. Holly was fitting to punch me.
Hey, Mitzi brings this up that we need to get registered Republicans to reach out to sign your petition and get you on the ballot. Are you not doing convention only?
No, I'm gathering signatures as well. So when I came down time to decide whether I was going to gather signatures or do convention only, I reached out to a couple of past delegates, or now they're past delegates. At the time they weren't, right? And then also just people throughout my neighborhood. Just, I guess, by network, if you will. Yeah. And the overall consensus was, I know caucus is March 5th. I have a previous engagement. How can I still help have my voice be heard and help you be on the ballot?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
I'm gathering signatures. So
when you ran for the House and you and I sat down and discussed it, I told you then that I would be remiss if I said it is not that it wouldn't be advantageous to seek both, because the law has put in place that there is a dual path. And I am counseling a candidate who really believes in what she's running for. I cannot fault you. Of course, you're doing what the law has provided. And I totally believe that every signature, as long as it's you gathering and it's your supporters gathering, because when you're just paying people to get it, that angers me. But I know that I've had to gather signatures for a candidate before. I have to look these people in the eye and tell them why my candidate is worth their time and effort. And I never default those or fault those signatures, because these are people who are giving their one vote because they can't sign multiple. If they sign yours, they cannot sign another person running for that seat.
Right.
And they're trusting you.
Yeah.
And I hope if it's you gathering or if it's people who support you, I can't fault you for that. It does make the party irrelevant, the delegates, if you do
I kind
that.
of heard you say that earlier. So, of course, I did go to my caucus night and was elected as precinct chair. So I think there's definitely a role for our delegates and the party and being involved and being part of that primary vote of who's on the ballot, right? But I also think that there's a part for signatures. So if anyone says, oh, getting signatures is easy, then they haven't gone out and done it themselves. So Mitzi has been actually one of my largest supporters. She's a bus driver for the school district, and she's gone out and individually collected signatures, and so have I. So I've reached out. I've gone to almost every school within the district and talked to different teachers, families, parents, principals. I've attended almost every county council meeting, reached out to our county council members, our city council.
Look, I know you. I know you have done all this
events.
And more, because you are that person.
Right.
You are the person who is going to get in front of as many people as you can and listen.
And it is so hard to get signatures. I just want everyone, like, it's not just, when I first heard it, I'm like, I know 2,000 people. I can get that easy. No,
it's really hard.
It is very, very difficult.
How big is this this district?
It's huge. So it's all of Tooele County, Magna, parts of West Valley, Saratoga Springs, and Eagle Mountain. So
you've got to get signatures from there too, right?
Technically, it's just out of the whole district,
but you might want to get in front of people.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 teachers down there that are collecting signatures for me as well, and I have some family members, and then a couple Granite School Board members in Salt Lake, Magna area that
Okay.
are collecting as well.
You've talked to all these people.
Mhm.
Give me a summary. What are you hearing that is the most consistent and how it would apply to you on the school board?
That is a good question. So like consistent.
You got teachers upset about this. You've got parents upset about this. You've got bus drivers who's suffering this. Your experience as a local school board member, now you're elected as a state school board member. All these people have shared stuff with you. What can you do as a state school board member to fix it or address it?
I think the most important part of it is yes, there is always a learning curve, right? When you
Right.
get into a new position, there's always going to be
On
a
the
part
job
of
training.
where you have to understand. So since I've been on the Tooele County School Board, I've actually gotten a job with the state of Utah, and I'm a policy analyst for them, which means I write rules
Wow.
and regulations for farmers and water across the state.
So you write policy now?
Mhm.
There's only one worse job than writing policy, and that'd be reading it.
Oh, you have to read it to write it.
Yeah, so wait, you actually write regulations too.
Uh-huh.
So for
So-
somebody who wants to deregulate a lot, you kind of have a special understanding of policy and the reason for it,
Mhm.
writing it.
Like a priest
And I've
working
also
for
been able
Satan.
to
That's
see
kinda
how other boards have worked within the agriculture community and then also with water across our state. Our state school board is not functioning at the way it should be. And what I'd like to bring is my knowledge and my experience and help, whether it's educating other school board members or talking, whatever it would be, that we start helping them become more effective and understand truly what their role is and how we can move forward in making the best decisions for education in our state.
Okay, do you see though the school board we have now, how they could be better?
The state school board
Mm-hmm.
with the current members?
Yeah.
No, I think it's going to take some new members.
I mean, I'm
Maybe.
saying you're right, but you're going to be one of how many? 13?
There's 15.
15.
Mhm.
One of 15. How can you make a difference and actually enact some change in some of these ideas you have about deregulation? I love it. Localization, love it. And I don't know, I feel like there's a lot more of the same right now on the school board, and it's just become it's also run by bureaucrats. Those members of the school board only have so much power. It's bureaucrats writing this stuff.
Right. But I think that's also where it comes part of the process, right? Of we need to hold our school board members responsible for what their job is. And then again, you have the state school board that is coming out of their lane, and then they're pushing these responsibilities or these jobs or whatever onto the bureaucrats, where it should be going down to our local school board members, where they're also held accountable by their constituents.
They're electeds.
Right. So, I mean, it's like what you said earlier. If I ran into you at the grocery store, I would hope you come up to me and be like, Camille, why did you vote that way on the state school board? Right? Or why did you vote that way on the local school board? Right now, they can't even get votes through because they're focused on so many kind of nitpicky things that they can't accomplish anything throughout the day.
A lot of it's social justice oriented anyways.
Yeah,
It's
and I
not
think that's
looking at the
where
majority. It's looking at a tiny
Yeah.
minority.
And if we look at the state school board as a whole, and I would hope that someone either could lead by example or educating the other state school board members, that's not your job. This is where we need to have this conversation. Let's rein it in and say, this is our job. This is what we need to do,
So
instead of veering off this way.
Lori Higgins, thank you for tuning in, Lori. She says, hi, Camille. We've talked before about pornographic books in Tooele County school libraries.
Mhm.
You indicated when you were on the Tooele County School Board, you inquired about implementing a notification system, but that was not possible at that time. Can you tell us if books that contain sensitive material were in our county at that time? You indicated you were aware they were in other districts in Utah, but not specifically Tooele. And what was done about it if they were in our district at that time? This is now relevant even now with the books and everything else.
Yeah.
But
So the idea that I actually had when I was on the Tooele County School Board, and So right now, your child goes in the library, right? And they check out a book. I don't know if yours do this, but my daughter, she's in 4th grade. She comes home once a week with about 15 books.
Yeah.
She
Mine too.
doesn't read half of
No,
them,
well,
but
I'm telling you, I couldn't read it. I learned to read when I was like 30.
well, she
but-
can read, but she doesn't read through all the books.
Yeah,
is
I
what
was
mean.
like 30.
She just couldn't decide.
I honestly
Right?
didn't read my first book until I was in the Army.
Wow.
My first full book.
Okay.
I passed all some of my books. Anyways, but it's a free thing that you can get
Mhm.
and explore.
Right.
Whether it's just a tidbit here and there. That's why kids that age nab it.
But as a parent, that's when I have to grab her backpack and look through it and go, why did you pick this book or whatever? Right.
Yeah, as you should.
But at the end of the year, they send out a notice every single time. Your daughter has not turned in XYZ book. You owe the library
my
$45. And
Yep.
I'm like, why didn't you send me this notice 5 months ago when she checked out the book?
Mm.
Right. So I know
Right?
exactly where to retrace the steps.
Or why at that time was there not, hey, your daughter checked out this book. This has been flagged as NR 13, whatever the rating systems are, right? Something, or here's a recap of the, a brief explanation of what book your daughter checked out today. Something where I would get a notification saying this is what your daughter checked out. So I'm on the same page.
Regardless if it's a dangerous book or not, they should just say, hey, so-and-so checked out
Right.
Margaret's
Well,
books,
it's all
these books from the
electronic now.
library.
right.
I get it
But-
on my kids' thing on campus, but it said so-and-so checked out this book today. Well, that alerts me that
Okay.
my kid has a book.
Okay.
It's due in 2 weeks. And that way, in 2 weeks, I can be on him. Take your book back. Take your
Yeah.
book back.
Well,
so I don't
See,
get these
and
unknown fees at the
The
end of
school
the year.
district doesn't do that. So that's awesome that Excelsior does that, because the school district, and I've reached out and asked them, and right now the way the computer system's set up is that they don't have that capability
Which means
for
they need
whatever
more
reason,
money.
right? My thought is, I wish I was a computer program. I would make that computer program.
That
and
sounds
do
like
it,
it'd
right?
be simple for whatever logging system there is, because
Right.
it got to log the kid's name, got to log the book into, just shot an email to the parent at the same time.
But so I think that is something that it can be done. I'm not on that board anymore. I've reached out to other board members. Is this something we can move going forward? Since then, I don't know what other school board members' priorities are, but I know that that hasn't been the top of their priority to
What
work on
about,
that. So.
which is top of mind right now, is these pornographic books.
Right. So right as I was coming off the Tooele County School Board, that's when a lot of the conversations were blowing up, and we were finding, they were saying that this book was on the shelf, this book was on the shelf. And at the time, there was an organization that came out with a list of all of the different books. I went through that list and checked what I could in our school district books. None of those were, according to when I searched through them, they were in our libraries. Since then, I actually talked to somebody at the district office today. There's been a bill that was passed just this last legislative session that talks about, they they clarified the definition of pornographic material. But now when when 3 school districts deem a book as pornographic, all districts have to pull it off their shelves. When I talked to Tooele County about it, they said, that's fine. Most of the books, if we ever did find one that was on one of our shelves, hadn't been checked out in 5 or 10 years. So if other districts are now, saying this is a pornographic book, let's pull it off the shelves.
Hold on. So 3 districts can say,
Here's
this
what books are in your schools.
so it could be, the Dr. Seuss Redfish Bluefish. Is there a check on that? If 3 of them say this is pornographic,
I'm sure there's
it
a check.
automatically
I mean, they
gets.
have to
It has
meet
to
the
meet
definition of
standards.
sensitive
Okay,
materials,
okay.
but it's still hard to say, because what may be pornographic. I mean, yes, nobody wants porn in our schools. I know nobody does, right? But there may be something that, say, Washington County, for whatever
Are you
their
there,
culture
God?
is,
It's me, Margaret.
right?
I read that book as a kid. It was very enlightening on what a 12-year-old girl goes through and all of that. But I wonder if that book would be deemed inappropriate now.
Yeah, I don't know. That would have to be something, and it could be, right? But even think about Shakespeare. Shakespeare, you have men dressing up as women. And
you have
beating women.
incest, and you have murder and
all
suicide.
sorts of things, right? So then if they, I mean, we even, Davis School District, they pulled the Bible because they said it was inappropriate.
They did that because of the other books.
Right.
That was bullcrap.
But then if you have 2 other districts that say, I want to prove a point, again,
That's the concern.
right then, where is our local school board a part of this
Because
conversation?
honestly, you could probably just by the words written in the Bible, there are parts that could easily fall under that. I mean, there are a lot of them.
But it's that 3-headed beast again, right?
Yeah.
You have the legislators saying, we know what's best for the state. We're going to pull and say that all of our districts need to follow this.
Man, it'd almost be easier to just say, these are the books allowed in this school library.
Yeah.
That'd be the easier way to do it instead of chasing down what you don't want in there.
Either way, I think it's a difficult predicament, but I think it still should have been left up to our local school boards and what
100%.
I think
abilities
everything
they
should
have.
be left up to a local school board. I think the state
Yeah.
school board should be there to handle the administrative part of, okay, these boards need this curriculum that we approve. They tell us the curriculum we approve, or this school needs this attention, this school needs this attention. But I want everything as local as possible.
See, and I'll actually go a step further. I think our state school board should just look at funding and go, all right, Twilla County, this is how much money you get. Alpine, this is how much you get.
Yeah.
You decide what's best for your community.
Yeah, I love it. Now, we currently, the incumbent that you are running against has served on the school board, and full disclosure, he's the principal of my children's school, and I love the education style of how my kids are learning, and the tracking of how they're learning and better improving and all that. I'd love to see that in all schools, but you probably know better on how he's voted. I'm assuming, since you've paid close attention, because I don't care who you are, parents, until COVID or until these books or until transgender kids were in bathrooms, we didn't see parents blowing up school board meetings. And this has just evolved over the last few years. So we're learning a lot, and we're only seeing the worst. But there are people like her here, Camille, who has purposely tuned into these meetings or ran for a seat on the school board years before this became a hot topic. So I have to give that to you, because if
She's
no one else
punishing
is
herself
served,
for something. She feels guilty, so she punishes herself. She says, you know what I'm going to do?
this
I'm
is
gonna
it
watch
though.
school board
You have
meetings.
obviously worked and done the homework.
Mhm.
And for those of us that are hot and bothered now about these key topics, these key topics also are such a minute part of what the job of school board is. So it's easy for a parent to go in there and rail against a vote for this or this or this because it's one of those hot topics. But there is so much that gets decided in these meetings.
Mhm.
The funding, the districts, the curriculum, all of this. I want an elected person accountable for the curriculum getting in front of my child.
Right.
That's what I want. And
Well,
the more local, the better.
And I agree with you 100%. And I've talked with Matt a few different times, and there's a lot of things that him and I actually see eye to eye on. And he's a nice guy. I think he does a phenomenal job at Excelsior.
Wears tweed well.
He does. But his experience is with charter schools. Most of our district is not a charter school. And he has been approached or involved in lots of conversations that impact more than just that charter school. So a while ago, there was a conversation about rural transportation, and they were talking about rolling the rural transportation funding up into the WPU.
So explain that to me. What's rural transportation?
So right now, our rural schools receive extra funding from the state to help pay for like your schools out in Wendover
Like
For
buses.
busing.
for
and
busing
things
and
like
stuff
that.
like
Okay.
that, right? So you have a bus that travels every day from Ibapaw into Wendover.
I know, that's insane, right?
Right? Yeah. And
That'd be a fun
School-
ride.
field
as
down
a
there, though.
district, right? As a district, we shouldn't be penalized because we're a rural community,
That
right?
is true.
So the state helps provide some of the payment for some of those schools and those different things. Not so much field trips. Field trips are usually funded through like your teacher parent organizations,
Nope.
those kind of things.
What's the WPA that it's?
It's the WPU. It's the weighted
WPU.
pupil unit, and that's what
It's the what?
weighted pupil unit.
Weighted.
Okay.
Weighted. Yep. So it's basically it's
So
a number
make
that
more fat kids, people.
No, it's a number that legislators use, policy analysts with the legislators to determine how much money a school district should get.
Mhm.
So it's based off of how many students you have enrolled, how many teachers you have. There's lots of things that go into the WPU, but it's just that formula. So they say, Tooele County has $1 million this year because they have 100 WPUs or whatever.
Do they count
actually are.
charters or just public schools?
They count charter. Well, charters is separate LEA, so they get their own funding.
There's a lot of
they use a
acronyms today.
WPU,
So
I'm back in the
when
Army. What's an
they
LEA?
give,
local education agency.
so
Okay.
when they give choice and they're giving vouchers
Mm-hmm,
to homeschool,
mm-hmm,
so they get their own funding,
mm-hmm.
and then you've got private schools that probably get funding or no?
They can use the scholarship money or the voucher money now to pay for private
The
schools.
individual can.
Yep.
But the state doesn't give the funding to the public schools.
So with the scholarship fits all.
I mean private.
Yeah, the way that that's set up is the private school has to be an approved vendor, and the money actually doesn't go to the individual. The state will directly pay it straight to the private school.
Right. So, but either way, I
Yes.
get to decide. I don't
Where it
like
goes.
public school. I'm taking my kid to a private school.
Yep.
And I'm taking that $8,000 or
Yep.
whatever that they deem him being in the seat in a public school. I'm taking it towards my tuition in
Right.
this public school or
Which
private.
the WPU is half of that.
Gotcha.
So our public education schools are getting half of what the scholarship.
So
students
tell
receive.
me, do you like that? Do you like the voucher program where parents can choose their own education level for their kid?
That's kind of a trick question.
I hate to say education level. That's
Right.
not fair. The facility that they want their child educated in.
So again, I think it goes back to we're throwing mud at the wall and trying to see what sticks. So our parents have lots of options within the public education system. The idea now that we're taking tax dollars to pay private organizations with no accountability to the taxpayer is really frightening
But
to me.
But the taxpayer is me and
Right.
the child is mine. And I'm putting my child into a private school,
Hmm.
getting that money that you would have gotten if I'd had him in public school.
Right.
So I see that it
And
shouldn't
generally
be
most-
considered yours. It's not your taxpayer dollars. It's my taxpayer dollars going into
And
educating my
most people
child.
who
Right.
would take the effort to put their child into a private school are probably a parent who is present.
And doesn't like this current education happening in the public school or
like
charter
maybe
school.
maybe they don't want their kid to experience their first knife wound by 6th grade, you know?
But you see what I mean? Because I look at
do.
it like it's my tax dollars.
Right.
I want to put my
Whoa,
child
easy there.
using my allotted amount.
Holly,
Because if I
think
put him in public school, that public school's getting $8,000 for my child being in that seat.
But the public school doesn't get $8,000.
$4,000.
Right. They receive 4. And that's what I was going to tell you. So
I
then
think
there's
the
the line
government
items that
sees
goes
it
underneath
as their
Our
money,
child.
and we get a little stipend of it when we donate our labor to them.
But I think kind of going back to what you're saying though, Holly, is then if the private organizations can still receive the taxpayer dollars with a third or no accountability, why do our public schools have to jump through all of these hoops and have all of this accountability
to who?
to the taxpayer?
But
How?
there's also a second layer on the schools, because the schools also get taxpayer money to be built.
Right.
The schools also get taxpayer money to be staffed.
And private schools pay for that themselves. And
Some do, but now
what's
they're
going to
just
be
passed
the
another law.
accountability is to me when
Mhm.
my child graduates with honors, with ready for college, and at the level that they are at mentally, a public school or a private school may be just what my kid needs, and that benefits my child, which is another graduation rate in Utah's graduation
Right.
dump.
Right.
And a new potential college kid in Utah's reporting of college kids, although I saw at the state school board, they didn't include white kids or Asian kids on their little graph of kids going to college.
Oh, that would be weird.
It was really weird. It's one of the ones where Natalie Klein called out the bureaucrat didn't have it in front of her, but she's like, why aren't you including white kids and Asian kids in
Really,
these races?
it wouldn't be weird in this day and age.
And they were like, oh, we didn't do this graph. So-and-so did. She's like, oh, wait.
When
did
they add them
so-and-so.
on, this day and age, they will skip white males again just to make sure.
It's crazy. But so whereas you see it, you're thinking of the whole, right? I'm thinking of the individual family who decides public school is not good. I do not want my child in public school. I want to be able to take my child and some of my tax dollars that I pay and go to this private school.
So then let me switch it around. I'm going to take my tax dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use them to pay for my son's guitar lessons or piano lessons.
Can you do that though with this money?
Mm-hmm.
I would say go ahead.
I think
It's your money.
But
it's your
it's
child.
our money goes into
And your
the
child
taxpayer dollars.
may be off to Juilliard because your child has a talent. I mean, that's arguing against the homeschoolers because I know many, many homeschoolers, and they actually watch our show, who that money does pay for the private teacher to teach their child piano. It pays for a private teacher to teach them Spanish, and they're getting a 10 times better education because it's one-on-one and their children are excelling.
In some cases they do
higher.
excel, and in other cases they don't. But I think that's the thing is I want parents to have a choice. I want them to say, and a taxpayer, this is what I want my tax dollars to go towards. This is what I want to be able to do. But at the same time, when you're making decisions for an entire district, you also need to be held accountable for you don't have children in the system, right?
No,
So-
my kid's an adult now, so.
But you still have to pay 70% of your property
Mhm.
taxes
So do our
towards the
seniors.
school. So how do you feel about your tax dollars going towards private organizations? How, as a school board member, are you going to answer that?
Let me tell
you have
you-
to be able to say parents need to have their choice, but we also need to
Parents-
educate our system.
Okay, I'm gonna bring up
Always be the
hot-
ones in charge.
a hot take right now. Okay.
Okay.
As a
Hotter than any of the others?
yes, very
Oh.
hot.
You're
As-
used to this.
As a minor
You've known us long enough.
as a minor student of history, okay,
Oh.
just a minor,
A savant of history.
it
Mhm.
feels like we're building a red guard
Okay.
in our particularly school, like grade school system all the way through senior, and especially our first 2 years of college. It feels scary.
Okay.
In
if
public school.
If anyone has studied the People's Revolution of China, you're looking at what we're producing now, and you're like, how long before they are out marching for their hero and cutting the feet off cats?
We're seeing them marching now against guns,
And it feels
against
like
global
not just
warming.
against guns,
It's like we're
against
teaching
they
them to
take
be
up a new cause
activists.
every week, but they're
But do they?
folk. Oh yes.
Not in our county.
Okay, because I'm like,
Salt Lake County, we've seen
Oh,
it.
actually,
especially-
there's some in our county.
14-year-old, right? And only 14, right? But he's still a freshman in high school, and he's coming up on making some big decisions, and he's kind of figuring out where his life is. Even he's going to be 20, my Marine, right?
Mhm.
In his mind, the things that are the most important is one, not getting into debt.
That's
Right.
a good thing.
And
That's why you join the Corps and
Right.
not go off to college.
Yep, that's why he didn't go to college, and that's why he didn't buy a house, right? Because he did not want to come out at a 24-year-old with $50,000 in debt.
Mhm.
Well, Andy sounds like he's a patriot.
Yeah.
Loves his country more than most.
So, but that's
And he
what.
likes to taste of crayon. Can we just say it right now?
But that's what when you talk to a lot of kids, that's where they don't want the debt. They don't want to be how even like my parents, right? They don't want the job for 50 years. They don't care about the pension. They don't want the pension.
Jobs can't even afford to keep you for 30 years
Right.
because they fire you right before retirement, so they don't have to pay the retirement because it's they can get someone cheaper.
Yeah.
Here's what your husband, I believe it's your husband that said, how do we graduate people who can think? I manage a group of 20, 30-year-olds that can't think. They have to have their hands held through every task. So I end up working 70 hours a
What
week.
does your
I have to
husband do
comment
for
on
work?
this because I hire people too. And in my job, I'm not kidding. I've had more than one parent call and complain because I managed their child by teaching them the rules, by treating them with respect, but by being no bullshit and just saying, look,
This is
the
your job
rules.
you have now?
And I care not to mention, but these.
Hold on. They
and I
have to be
said
adults
these-
to be hired.
Yes.
Like,
And I'll tell you what I told the parents. Your child is an adult. If he has a problem with the way I manage him, he can call me or HR. Either way. Here's the thing that he's mentioning is we're graduating kids who don't know how to think. That's absolute. We're teaching them how to follow curriculum, follow social issues, to be activists. And by the time they get to college, they're well prepared to be activists.
Well,
but also, we're not telling the kid to question authority. Like my son asking a science teacher, can I see your source on this statement right here, Florida underwater in 10 years? I'd like to learn more. That scares my son to even ask him. And I say, there's our problem then, because you're being told to trust this teacher. If you can't, my daughter's in debate. She's got a teacher that fills her mind full of questions just to get the school kids excited, and they challenge him every single day. My daughter is getting far better at negotiating where it comes to mom and dad time because she is walking all over us.
Right.
Because her logical arguments are there.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
My son too. I've always told him, question with boldness, question me, question your teachers.
Yep.
Some kids will, but we are raising so many kids to not question.
Yeah.
And teachers are just teaching curriculum rather than creating conversations.
So let's flip it around though. Let's say that you're that teacher, right? And whether you follow the state school board meetings or not, or you follow your local school boards or not, let's just say you follow the news and you hear time and time again. And I get there are some teachers out there that don't always follow the rules, teachers being fired, teachers quitting, all of these things because they may or may not have said the wrong thing in the classroom. So you're going to follow this micromanagement classroom curriculum to the T to make sure that you're doing a good job.
In my opinion, you could not legally be called a teacher.
And then how do you go to your local school board and say, I want to appeal being fired for my job from X, Y, and Z? And they go, well, it's out of our hands because we have to do what the state says.
Well, and the state will do this too, because they have to do what the legislators say.
Right.
And here's the thing, people, we've got to have accountability. There's a three-headed monster. And the more local we get, the more freer we are. And if I have one kid or, one teacher at school that is growing my daughter's mind in a way that is so beautiful because she's questioning and then she's researching because she doesn't want to give the wrong answer, but she's being taught how to think critically for herself. And to me, that is the opposite of what the education system in this country wants. Because like he says, we are seeing it in our schools, small activists who are going along to get along, and they're buying every damn thing that curriculum teaches them, and the curriculum's wrong.
Right. Well, but what I was going to say earlier, so I have my oldest and then my freshman, right? I feel like they question me on everything.
Well, teenagers
do.
Right?
Well, you said your freshman's your second born?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Right. And he questions everything. And
How many, how many broken bones has he had compared
does he
to his
question
older brother?
You or teachers?
So he's bigger than his older brother.
No, but how many broken bones has he had?
I thought he would have a lot more by now, and he actually hasn't.
Hasn't had any, but has he had more stitches, things like that?
Yeah, he had his arm pulled out of the socket.
The second born are just demolition derby men.
Yeah, that's true.
But tell me, is he questioning just you or is he questioning teachers?
Well, but I think it goes back to what you were saying about your son. For whatever reason, I don't know if they're scared or if they don't care. At least with both of my boys, it was like, I'm here to do the motions. I want to get my grade and graduate and move on and go from there.
That's my daughter.
Right?
She'll do and say, And I'll give you an example. I know you guys have heard this before, but second grade, my children are learning, my son's first, learning about the form of government for the United States and all of that. One of the questions was, what form of government does the United States have? Was it a communism, socialism, or a democracy?
Mm-hmm.
My son put D, a republic.
Nice.
He got that one wrong because that wasn't an option. So I take it to the
I
teacher.
see. I was like, wait,
teacher
what?
who I love dearly.
Right.
I said, you marked this wrong. He's not wrong. She looks at it. She's like, well, I don't know. I'm not an American citizen, but this is the curriculum. I said,
She
well, how do
looked
I
at it and
fix
went,
this?
"Bah."
And she says, you got to go to the administration. Now,
Right.
this is before Matt was our principal. So we had another principal. I went to the administration and I said, this is wrong. And she looked at it. She goes, absolutely, it's wrong. We need to go to the state school board.
Mm.
It's not your local school board, because I'd have been on the phone with you.
Right.
But because we're a charter.
Right.
So we go to the state school board. 2 years go by. My daughter now, same class, same tests.
And they didn't change it.
Wasn't changed. My
Right.
daughter wrote democracy because that's what they wanted her to write. And she just wanted the A.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing is my son has always been right up front. In fact, he gets a lot of comments like he talks a lot or
Right.
he'll argue. And I'm like, oh, what's he arguing about? Oh, I'm not punishing for questioning what he's reading.
Right.
My daughter is then the one who will put her head down to get the A, get through the class and not have any, doesn't want to stand out. She's an introvert. That's why I'm so excited about this debate class and this art teacher, art and debate. She has this guy who is constantly making her question and
Right.
answer and research and answer. And I'm
So
seeing
he's
this
an art
whole,
/ debate teacher?
yeah, he teaches,
Tell
he's
me,
our
has
art
a big
teacher.
brown perm.
He's so awesome.
Please tell me,
But-
is it a big brown perm?
I don't know. It might be naturally curly. What I'm saying is to see my daughter evolve to
Mhm.
this, to what my son was, and to see him falling into line now,
Right.
doesn't want to stand out. I think it's the teenage brain that's
Yeah.
so worried. Everyone's staring at them all the time. But I've always told them, you always question, because adults make mistakes.
And they do. And I also think, though, too, it's part of our responsibility as parents to teach our children to question, right? And you're involved, I'm involved, you're involved. So we taught our children to do that, right?
And most parents.
And there's a few
Don't.
parents out there that don't, right? But I also, conversations with teachers, administrators, they welcome questions. They say, you know what, there's a problem. Tell me about it. I can't fix something if I don't know anything about it. If your child is struggling or if they're doing really well, whatever it is, come sit in my class. Let's work together. Let's do what's best for our children rather than pushing and fighting these fights and polarizing everybody so we can't make anything better than it was.
Do you
And
think,
that's where I think
do you
a
think
lot of
the
problems are.
teachers union hurts more than it helps?
I think there's definitely a role for the teachers union. The state and the national unions, they're taking on more of a role that I think is outside of what really
It's
should
political.
be for teachers. Yeah.
Right. It's political when you don't want politics. I even remember when you were running for a nonpartisan race and I asked you, are you Republican? And you were like, my values and all of this. And I was like, oh, say no more. I get it. Because a teacher or somebody that serves in that role, a law enforcement officer, they don't want to share political party
Right.
because their job isn't political. It never should be. And so, I mean, I stopped you before you even answered because I was like, nope, I get it. I get it. Because I don't want to know the politics of my kid's teacher.
Right.
Because if my child knows your politics, you're doing it wrong.
I don't
Because
know.
you need to
If-
be teaching kids
If I've
both
got
sides.
a history teacher and they come out and say, oh, I'm a socialist or I'm a social democrat, I can guarantee they don't know their job.
But that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't know what any smart teacher
Other
doesn't
than
share their
that,
political
yeah.
affiliation. But when I'm seeing, when your child can have a conversation or make a question, my son has an amazing history teacher that again is making his wheels just turn. And all she has to do is start the class off and they're talking about the Constitution and the founding. And she's like, okay, rules of the day from here on out. These are the rules. Principal is going to be able to search your locker at anytime they want. So make sure you don't have anything in there. It'll get you in trouble. Number 2, if you want to turn in an assignment, you have to pay a tax. It's 25 cents. You pay it to the front office. They'll give you a stamp. Then you can turn it in. Then I'll give you a grade. So she went over this whole list of ridiculousness. And the kids are like, oh my gosh. My son goes, she goes, don't worry. I emailed this home to your parents. And if by chance a teacher is traveling from another state, they will have the right to stay the night in your house. Your parents must agree to this. They already have. And my son goes, nope. My mother would never agree to this. And my son goes to Patriot Camp, and he knows the Constitution. And he goes, you're breaking every one of our civil laws, of our civil liberties with this document. He said, well, only one. But everyone was so stunned in fear by it. And he was like, this is laughable. This is laughable. I'm not paying to turn in an assignment.
Right.
He's like, why don't I just give you like $10 and call it a straight A then? And he was joking with her. She's like, well, why would you ever argue with me? Just being very like a king.
Right.
Because this was the whole point of the exercise.
Right.
And here he's in this debate, and these kids are like, be quiet. You're going to get in trouble. Rule number 3, you can't argue with.
Yeah.
And it ends up, yes, this is what
That's
caused
part of
people
it.
to throw tea into the ocean. And this is where you're getting these kids' motor running. I don't know if what she did was all right. I do know the principal was standing right outside the classroom.
Right.
And he was going to come in because he was the king, right? But one kid was brave enough to call her out. And she's telling me this during parent-teacher conference. She's like, your kid was ready to go to war with me, telling me I was wrong. No kids do that anymore.
But I think a big part of that, though, is too, because you will have teachers who a lot of times are afraid to do their jobs.
I guarantee that's true.
They just want to teach. And they want parents involved. They want to have that relationship and do what is best for kids. And so many times they're sitting there going, I'm going to say the wrong thing. Even though my principal's standing outside of the door, listening and part of, he knows what I'm doing. I'm going to lose my job over this. So I'm going to sit here and follow this micromanagement curriculum to the T.
So do you think we have maybe, well, I don't know, another question. We're running out on time, but we will have you on again.
Unless you got more time, because
well, I don't have more time.
Okay, well, why don't you go do what you're going to do? Because I don't want to leave. Oh wait, this is your studio.
Do we have? Are we?
Dang it.
Here's a question: are we administration heavy right now?
Well, it depends on how you want to define that. So if you
cost numbers.
Well, what I mean by that is, so Tooele County School District, if you look at our district administration compared to
Salt Lake,
Granite School District or Salt Lake, our administrators make and are paid are on the lower end. And we actually have one of the smallest school district administrations.
Okay, so I
do believe one of the best run districts too, don't we?
So then,
but then as a state, our administration again is a lot smaller than even your bigger states.
Okay.
Like Texas.
So then the pressures wouldn't be as much from the administration.
Right.
Looking for stuff to do. It'd be more from parents.
Right. Well, if you look at, a lot of like teachers, they just want to teach. They don't want to have to do all the paperwork. They don't want to have to do all of these things. But if you look at how many unfunded mandates keep coming through from our legislators, there were 250 education bills.
Tell me what these unfunded mandates include.
Well, one of them they talked about was, like having nurses and mental health and those kind of things in the
it's unfunded.
It's most of it's
that would
unfunded.
be
So they're just going
expensive.
They're saying, as a teacher, now you need to watch and make sure that this kid mentally and physically and everything is okay, which is not part of their job.
No,
Yeah.
But we're not going to give you any extra money to help that
Nor are we
student.
going to train you in that or any of that.
Or any of those.
And some of
things.
these students can be violent.
Right.
Can
And
we
these
just
teachers are getting hurt.
So then you have your administration, which is already thin, and they try to take some of that stuff from the teachers and say, we're going to take some of this paperwork and help you so you can just do your job. But then you have another bill that's passed again, and another bill that adds on top of those large classroom sizes.
We need to jump
they have
back
no
in
way.
and just push
Right.
up to the legislatures and say, are you dumb?
Well,
I want to
why
use
aren't
the
these
R word,
bills-
but
Why aren't these bills consolidated and a committee goes through and line by lines them and sees why they're conflicting. You can't have 200 bills in education and not have it be conflicting.
So 6 years ago, maybe it was 5, I had a legislator tell me the education community needed to sue our legislators and get them back in their lane.
That's a good idea.
I've also had the
I
idea,
told them
though,
all that
that maybe legislators
No, that
too
is
would be accountable to the people. Maybe legislators, like in Florida, where they're having legislators accountable for curriculum.
Mhm.
So they put together parent and school committees to build curriculum because it's their ass if it's bad.
Well, I guess my other question is, though, too, is as a parent, I have a problem with curriculum, right? And I
Yeah.
go to my legislator. Why is there not that conversation of, well, you need to talk to your local school board. You need to talk to X, Y, and
Whoever
Z.
is writing the curriculum.
Whoever it is, right, to fix your
Who is
problem.
writing
Because
the
I don't know why
curriculum?
we need to have another bill that comes through and says, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it. How many more bills do we need?
Who is the person who writes the curriculum for the state of Utah?
Well, it depends on what the curriculum is, but they come from vendors, from private
From
companies.
outside of the state of Utah?
In some cases, yeah.
So I would like to get down to it. At the end of the day, I want the curriculum to come from one place, and that place, school board, has
Mhm.
decided it's good enough for my kid. And that way, when I have a curriculum issue, I have to spend a Thursday morning and go take the day off and go to downtown and sit through a meeting and stand up and go, you all approve this curriculum. It's crap. You're crap. You're crap. You're okay. You're okay. You know, do
Right.
one of those. But right now, who do we hold accountable for the curriculum?
Well, I know with the school district, a lot of it is going to be your local school board. And then whenever they adopt new curriculum, they issue it out for public
So for
comment, and they
me,
work with teachers and parents.
In a
and,
charter, it's going to be the charter
Mhm.
board
Mhm.
and then the state school board.
Right.
Okay. People, we want to empower you. There are so many good comments on here, and I'm sorry that we have to cut her short, but hey, you have a website?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
Mail4schoolboard.com.
Yep, I've got it pulled up. I'm going to share it real quick. I also would love to give Camille.
Is it FOR?
It's this one
No,
right
number 4.
Number 4.
here. Okay. I'd like to give Camille a few minutes. We don't have to cut out right away for her to just kind of give a good elevator speech for the people.
So I just want, do you guys know where that is? I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Salt Flats.
So do you want to hear something fun about the Salt Flats? It was during COVID, and Wendover had their graduation. So of course it was only
That's
behind
not-
camera. And me and the board president at the time, we had to drive out there. So we drove out together and we stopped on the Salt Flats and took pictures in our graduation gowns. And
That's awesome.
Oh, really?
It
Now
was so
that's
much
not
fun.
the Newfoundlands. That looks more like Pilot's Peak there on the right. But
Look,
that's
you
not.
don't have to get
That's
like
too small because
technical.
you're right on it.
yeah,
That
we were
might be-
standing
that
on
might
it.
be
I have
the
a picture of
Newfies.
my son when he's 1 year old. My friend's a photographer and wanted to do an artsy piece.
Mhm.
So we went out there, and it's funny now after COVID,
Right.
but he had toilet paper rolls all built like a fort and all
Oh.
over. So much toilet paper. And there's my little 1 year old playing in it with the Salt Flats and everything.
Nice.
It was an arts piece. Now I'm thinking that would
Be
be funny
expensive.
during COVID. Camille,
Right.
you have people right now that are supporting you and are gathering signatures on your behalf.
Yep.
As a party chair, you know I'm unhappy about it, but as a logical individual, I understand the state has provided a dual path. You're taking it. So I don't hold that against you. I just
Thank
asked
you.
if you are ever in the opportunity to vote it out. See, legislators talk all about how they love convention only, but they're not up there voting to get rid of SB 54,
Right.
because that would make people like you, grassroots, be able to fund your campaign with the same money your competitors are funding with and not have this big money getting you on a ballot.
Right.
I know it takes time and effort. If you go to her website, I know Camille, I know her family. They are extraordinary people, and I have the pleasure of calling you my friend. I have learned so
Absolutely.
much from you, and I can tell you, you are one hell of a good listener.
Thank you.
That is something that you have that obviously I don't have. But if you cannot give your time and make calls for her, or maybe get a petition for her, petitions are legal documents, folks. If she trusts you with that petition, you must witness every signature and put your name on the back that you have. That is a legal document. You are representing her. You make sure you do that and follow the laws. Okay. That's something that could really go
Absolutely.
bad for her.
Yep.
And if you don't have the time but want to donate some money, please consider donating to her if you believe in what she's doing. And I just wanted to lastly ask you, you had the debate in Utah County.
Mhm.
How did that go?
I attended a Meet the Candidate night.
They didn't debate.
No, we did.
Oh. I'm like,
So it wasn't a debate, it was a meet the candidate.
it was like a forum to get to know
Well,
you, or?
No, it was considered a debate. I didn't realize that, and a lot of this was on my own fault. And I should have thought about it. Our responses would be limited to only 1 minute. For some reason in my mind, I thought we would have at least a couple of minutes for responses.
Please call me anytime. If you have any questions about anything, if I can help, I will.
Right. And I know you, and honestly, I got the questions, I went through them all and thinking I'll be all right. Right. But
1 minute responses, that's tight debate.
And not only that, what's really difficult is education. And you guys know, it's not a black and white decision.
No, it's
And
not.
there are so many things that are in the gray. And so there were a lot of responses or questions that are gray answers and are difficult to answer. And so I don't know. It was a good evening. Let's just leave it
You
at
learned
that.
a lot.
I did. I had a teacher actually come up to me afterwards, and she said, "Thank you for coming. You can tell you've spent a lot of time in a classroom. You know what families and parents need in our classes." So
We have 3 great candidates in this race. I have to say, I've seen our current member, the school that he's run. She's right. He's got charter school experience. That's different. Monica, we've had on the show, and we've seen her as a parent advocate and a teacher from that perspective. And then we've got Camille, who's been on our local school board, who knows Tooele County District. She knows the Tooele schools. Her kids are in these schools, and she's all in. I mean, you were running for Senate here against a giant.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, an incumbent. And you were like, nope, I'm going to go after that. Even I was like, no, run for this. Nope.
Right.
This needs fixing, and it needs to be fixed right at the legislative level. And you've said that to me many, many times. And you just reiterated that tonight, is that the legislative level matters. She was putting her money into that race, and she did an amazing race. And unfortunately, the incumbent did win for her. But here she is again, because she sees a seat that she thinks she can do a better job. And with her experience and just with all the input, I know you guys probably don't understand. Tooele County is a very, very small town mentally. People talk to you, people show up to school board meetings, even mad people. And you hear from teachers who talk to other teachers. And so it does feel like she's in a really small town. Now, when you get up to Eagle Mountain or you get to West Valley, I'm sure you're seeing a little difference, more parents and
more than
and stuff.
stabbings we talked about a minute ago.
the only thing is Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, they are growing so fast.
Oh,
They are
yes.
so they're experiencing the same growth problems, the same issue. I mean, they're talking about dividing up their district. And even with dividing up their district, Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain would still be bigger than our school district in Tooele County.
See,
So,
small town.
but I mean, there is
When
issues.
10 years ago, Eagle Mountain wasn't the size of Stockton.
Right. But they have
It's-
similar issues. They
yeah.
have a very limited business base. They have a very limited
Tony, do you have,
tax base
do you
of
have
what they
proof
can
of
do.
that? Because I would like any proof that you could offer.
I don't think he does. It just felt that way towards
Okay.
the question. So
But I'm
Well,
telling you, if
it-
that's happening, I would like to know.
I don't know if Monica wrote them, but I would say that is a feeling a lot of conservatives have right now.
right.
Because they feel, conservatives feel like they're under fire all the time and they're entrenched.
hmm Well, and I understand
Because
that.
the
And I can understand
government-
the concerns, but I
I mean,
kind of thought we would talk about some of the issues of what the state school
Yes.
board should do.
You're
rather
applying
than
for a job.
right.
You're literally applying for a job.
hmm
And the guy who has the job right now also has to reapply for
Right.
the job. So this is why I don't love debates, because, and if you guys want to see another school board debate or something, here's what I like to have a forum where we get to know we get to know these
I
candidates.
like a good debate.
just
Who
like-
hosted the debate?
The Utah County Republican Party. But I'll give you an example of why it didn't feel as a very fair debate. One of the rules that they mentioned was you could only respond if your name was specifically called.
So if they called you out specifically.
Right. So if they said, well, Camille said this, and then as a candidate, I could respond.
And that's standard debate practice.
There were a lot of things where Matt's name wasn't called out, but they called a state school board member, voted or did this, and they wouldn't allow him to respond.
Wow.
And I felt that was not fair. He should have had a right, whether I agreed with the way he voted or not, he should have had a right to defend and say what he felt or why he voted a certain way.
I could not agree with you more. And so we're looking for ways to offer debates. But again, our whole goal as a party is to let you get to know these candidates and all the work they've done and why they qualify for this job they're asking your trust to give them. And I feel like debates is kind of like, it's not enough time to get into it, especially when a school board. I mean, it's like a debate between senators. It's how do you really get to know these people in a debate with such a short time? And I like a forum where we introduce you,
Mm-hmm.
people open ask questions to you, and then the next person comes on. And it's not like you're fighting them.
The
You're
reason-
individually applying for this job because you have to tell what your expertise are, what you bring to the table. And personally, I don't like a mudslinging. And I think a lot of people are like me.
Right.
They don't like to see dirty politics.
Right.
And when you start resorting to dirty politics, to me, you've lost me.
The reason I like a
So-
debate is because if someone says, I have this idea, I like to at least have that soft challenge of, okay, your idea does this. What if its outcome does this?
Right.
Or I like a
But
debate
there's-
because it's a testing ground. Because without that,
But there's not enough time
We
to
get-
get into it.
yeah,
That's the
you
problem.
need to do them right.
Well, but like I said, I mean, we had 1 minute to respond, and
That's not long enough.
Yeah,
It should be at least
and another thing, and I mean, this is how naive I am, right? We're going through the questions, and finally Matt said something about how often the crowd would clap. And I didn't even realize they weren't clapping for me or Matt. They would only clap for Monica, which was fine if they agree with what she was saying. But I felt like I could have said, I'm going to give you $1 million, and they wouldn't have agreed with me. So
Can
it
you-
was very,
Can you tell me
it was just a very
why
different environment.
Utah County had the debate? Is Saratoga Springs in Utah County?
So is Eagle Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And right now, conservatives do feel like they're under attack.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part is when
but I
they
think
feel
all
like
three
they're
of them are conservatives. I
yes,
think Matt, Camille,
yes,
Monica, all conservatives.
but
Right.
when you feel like you're under attack, you're gonna look for your bomb thrower.
Right. But I think too, one person on that stage has a record.
There's a reason
has to
Donald Trump
defend.
dominates everything
Whereas
Republican
the
right
other
now.
two don't know their job until they get the job.
Right.
You're asking for the job. You know you can do a better job than the person who has it. The person with a record, debates should be about that record. But the two people who have never done the job before, theirs is more of what I would do.
Mhm.
But he's somebody who knows all the job. And that's why incumbents usually dominate in those fields. But if an incumbent can't even defend himself,
Right.
that doesn't feel very fair. I don't know. Do you think it'd be advantageous for our party to host a debate?
I do. I mean, I think that there were a lot of misinformation and a lot of things, and from Matt's perspective, that he did not get a chance to say, this is why I voted this way. And honestly, I wouldn't mind hearing why he voted a certain way on whatever, are some concerns of what our county looks at.
Have
And
you had the opportunity to reach out and talk on the phone with all your state delegates?
Not all of them. I've talked to a few of them. I've, of course, done emails and those kind of things. To be honest with you, I have spent almost every waking moment outside of my normal day job gathering signatures
I get that. And
So-
talking to people.
and talking to
April
people.
11th,
And,
will you be at our Meet the Candidate night?
yep, I'm planning on that.
And
yes.
then she's also going to be at our convention, right?
Yep.
And so this gives you guys an opportunity to come meet Camille, even though she's not, The Meet the Candidate night is an open house forum. So you're just going to go talk to her, find out what her resume is and why she's going to represent you best. And then county convention, she's not getting voted that evening. She'll also be at state convention. So state delegates are going to get 3 opportunities to get and talk to Camille face to face. I highly recommend you do that. What you read on emails, what you hear on town halls, and like on our show, we hope we're giving you a bit of who Camille is.
Absolutely.
But you could need to sit down with these candidates, look in their eye, listen to their questions that they have for you, because those matter, and listen to their answers, and then share your issues with them, because they're going to ask you what your issues are. Where do you see the problems are? A good candidate's going to find out what the problem is before they tell you how to fix it, right? And that's what state delegates, their job is that they should be tasked with that. And by reaching out to them, and if it's something you want to do, I can reach out to the other 2 also. We can figure out a way to do a debate. It would be put on by myself and my party leadership team. I won't do it unless all 3 agree. But I also would make sure every state delegate's invited, that it wouldn't be a crowd of one.
Yeah. Well, and in their defense, it was the Friday night before Easter weekend. And they kind of threw it together last minute, which I appreciated and understood. I'm glad we all could go and talk and say what we could say.
I thought it was Trans Day of Recognition
That's
weekend.
Easter Sunday.
I don't Easter weekend's done. It's over.
You guys know, this is the thing I don't love about debates.
That's the first thing my son did. He called me though, and he's like, "Mom, this just happened." I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
I think Biden is being led around on a collar by someone with some very nefarious ideals, because I don't think Biden 15 years ago would have signed something like that.
Right.
Oh,
I agree.
no.
I mean, he's always been kind of a empty-headed
why I
moron.
don't love the debate format is just because I think you don't get a chance to get to know the candidate. And I don't think, unless you make it 2 hours long, which is ideal for me. If I had 3 candidates, I would have a 2-hour debate with a break in between.
Most debates are 3 hours that I enjoy, but
the one you had was what, an hour?
Almost an hour and a half.
Hour and a half,
But-
1 minute. And how many, and the hard part is getting the questions and getting the neutral questions. So I usually would have someone like Tim Gilley moderate and then have the crowd submit the questions. I would look through them and I would make sure they weren't duplicates, but that's how we like to do one. It does cost the party money. So am I doing more for our delegates by hosting a debate, or would it be better to host a town hall with 1 each? Or to host a forum where it's just a question and answer, not that these guys are all debating, because honestly, 2 of you don't know what the 3rd one knows, the incumbent. You're going to learn if elected.
See, and I really like the Meet the Candidate nights, because then as a delegate, they can come and not only meet your state school board candidates, but also
Your
federal
Senate,
candidates, Senate representatives, whatever, right? Where as much as the debate was nice, like we were able to kind of answer questions and go from there. I didn't feel like as a candidate, I really had that opportunity to have a conversation with delegates and say, this is where I stand on this, or, ask me your questions or anything along those lines. I think a town hall environment, even though it would be more personalized with the candidate, I think it'd be really difficult as a delegate to make it to all 3 of them, right?
So one thing I like about delegates getting in front or getting on the phone or meeting someone first before hosting a debate, which is why I try to do it right before state convention, is I think an educated delegate who knows your issues, knows your background, can ask educated questions. They know Monica's background. They know Matt's background. And because they've gotten to know everyone, to me, you get far better questions in a debate from someone who is going to challenge you. Right. And what may challenge you may not challenge her, may not challenge him, but they get to see you in action. They get to see all 3 of you. So I'll talk to my team and see if it's something, or we're trying to get one together with CD2 Congress. But like I said, if I can't get all 3 of them to agree, not doing it because it costs money, time. And if our delegates make it out there, I want it to be worth it. we will see what we can do if
Okay.
you'd like one.
Yeah.
But again, we're weighing what's going to be better for our delegates. Is it to watch a 2-hour debate, or is it to meet face to face with these people? April 11th, 6 p.m. Your people can come at 5 p.m. and start setting up. It's first
Awesome.
come, first serve in the firehouse. We're going to pull out the trucks, and Mayor Critchlow has been a huge supporter, and we expect a great turnout. Everybody come out to that. Come and meet Camille, and go to our website. We've shared it here on the Facebook comments. And if anything, throw her $5, $10, $25, or just get in touch with her, get to know her very, very well.
Oh, hold on.
Then get yourself a petition if you believe in her, and you can help her in her quest for signatures. When's your deadline?
That's what I was going to say. So I have almost all of them that I need, and I was going to try and turn them in Monday or Tuesday at the very latest. But I want to continue
You need like
gathering
100
through.
extra.
Yeah, just in case there's, of course, some that don't qualify. And so the very final deadline is the 12th, which is Friday. So if you are interested
Okay.
in signing and
We
supporting me
gotta-
as a candidate, feel free to reach out.
Even
We
though
gotta
it might
shut
make
this off
state
'cause
delegates angry,
we
you can
have
bring
picked
it
up
to
a
the meet the
glitch.
candidates.
Okay.
But what glitch?
It just keeps your. Put this in your ear.
It's what? I can't
Put this
hear
in
you.
your ear. We picked up an audio glitch somewhere.
I don't hear anything.
You don't?
Uh-uh.
So put that in there. It's
Okay,
there.
well, if we're done, and
It's
if
just
anyone
saying
can hear us,
April 11th.
April 11th.
No, it's just saying, put it in your ear. I want you to hear it before I turn it off.
But can you guys at home hear a glitch? If you hear anything weird, give us a thumbs up.
They won't hear you say that. I'm doing the lot here. Hit play. Let's see if it's on yours. Hit your audio. Can you turn up your audio on it real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it does sound fine.
Okay, so they can hear us.
I don't know why. Maybe it's my phone.
Okay, well, this is a great time to wrap it up. And guys, go get the Jace case if you are looking for an emergency pack to assist you if you have medications that you need. And we've got, you guys, when we see you, the eclipse will be over. And hopefully everyone is safe. Everybody is well protected. The government is terrifying people across the nation. But it's always good to have a food storage, water storage, ammo, and gun storage. I recommend tobacco and alcohol, great trading and bartering tools, bullets, of course. But also, if you don't have your medication in a stored option, medications to fight any type of infections, colds, ivermectin, if it's something really bad, viral, go to jacemedical.com and use the promo code. What did I tell you it was?
It's jam-16.
Jam-1516, I believe.
15-6.
I know. It's jam-1615. So that will give you a percentage off. It'll also tell Jace that we're doing the commercial for them, and it'll give us, like thumbs up.
What's that?
Do you see where it says?
We're so grateful.
Right, they're District 2. It's actually District 10.
She's in District 10.
I don't know why I put that there.
He actually knew the district well before I
I
did.
think
so.
it's because I'm just
Yeah.
rolling off.
Thank
You're
you for those who
Should I
tuned
put it right
in.
here?
And I just want to say hi to O'Malley May. So good to see you, girl. It's been a while. And I also want to thank for sure. I got to say hi to Tony because it's been a hot minute since I've seen you. And we've got a great picture of us at Lincoln Day 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'll make sure
But-
he's there Thursday night too.
Excellent.
Everyone always asks, "Where's your husband?"
Oh, they love him. He's easy guy to love.
He's an operations supervisor. I always say he's the guy you call when you want to get rid of a body.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Tony, we appreciate you tuning in, and we can only imagine how proud you and your wife are of your Patriot son. And what a crazy! You were slimmer then, weren't we all? We appreciate your support, and we love it when we see candidates that got a really good support system. So between the ladies and and this gentleman who have been standing by you. And I think that that's another testament to you're a wonderful neighbor. You're a wonderful community. You love this community. It's
I do.
obvious. You're highly involved.
Mm-hmm.
You're a great Republican. You live by the platform, which is something that I personally have witnessed. And I've personally witnessed your heart and your drive to make sure our community stays in a good spot. And so it's an honor to know you. And I think that we're all really, really lucky. We've got some great candidates in this race. Our job now is to find out which candidate best represents us and what we want for our kids, and who is going to give us parents more freedom and more say instead of regulation. And someone knows regulation over here. She's someone tasked with writing it. So you absolutely know what it looks like written down.
I do.
And then how you witness it implemented on with 3 different monsters.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome back
having
anytime.
a conversation, and I'd love to come back again.
It's always good chat. Yeah, we plan on getting you back on again. All
We've
right,
been
everyone.
boosting her for 3 weeks because we've had our
I know.
wires crossed.
I know.
I made the change with you, but didn't remember to tell him. So now you're panicking. And so we've been advertising you for 3 straight weeks.
Nice.
So
Well,
this is
I
her.
appreciate
She
it.
was worth it.
You made it. Yeah. But everyone, thanks for joining
Stay
us.
safe during the eclipse, guys. 4 minutes. If the rapture happens,
Uh-oh.
I'll miss
Okay.
you, Jared. I'll miss you.
Yeah, I'll be here still. Everyone, I think Home Depot will be selling. No, they won't sell eclipse kits up here. So go online, learn how to make
Amazon.
it. But a cool thing you can do while the eclipse is going, look at the ground underneath trees. That is one of the coolest things because it looks like a whole bunch of little mini
Little moons.
little mini moons, half moons.
Yep.
All around every shadow will have
I'll
that.
show you a half moon.
Every shadow. It's just when you bend over to tie your shoes.
Guillotine.
That's just the.
You didn't mention it this whole show.
I know I didn't have to say it. We were talking to.
That's a first. I'm not kidding. He mentions guillotine within every show we've ever had.
I'm trying to.
This is the first one he
I'm
hasn't.
trying to be gentler. I've got a toy guillotine up behind me though.
He really
But
does.
anyways, no, it's the way it refracts through leaves. It's really the coolest thing. Enjoy it. I think we'll all be safe, but if we're not, put in a good word for me with the big guy.
Tony lives in the edge of the desert and work at a chemical plant.
Yeah.
Kate, don't lead with that, Tony, because that's boring. Talk about the cool stuff, like the people you work with that don't know how to think.